Chapter 515. What are you looking at? She came in and saw Emotinga buried in the table, so he asked. Emotinga didn't even raise her head. Her eyes were fixed on a piece of animal skin on the table. She answered, looking at a map. She bought this map when she was in Yunzhong. The territories of the three big countries in Yunzhong were delineated on it, and there were detailed marks of the distribution of spirit veins and the stations of each major force. Even some islands in the inland sea, such as North Pole Island and One Leaf Island, were clearly drawn. In addition, there were simple outlines of Yuanzhou, Shaoyang, and other continents outside Yunzhong. Even the celestial pole in the north had a rough position. However, Yunzhong didn't understand the celestial pole at all, so the positions were quite different, and the outlines were completely wrong. But it didn't matter. What she was looking at wasn't the celestial pole. She pointed at the map with her fingertips. Spiritual aura streaked across, and the same picture and text appeared in midair. Looking at the map formed by spiritual aura, she pointed at the original Yuanzhou continent and moved it gently to the position of Sea of Returning Ruins. This is the current position of Yuanzhou. She then erased Yunzhong, which was closely connected to Yuanzhou. Yunzhong disappeared from its original position. The celestial pole and Shaoyang might have also moved. Her finger fell on the celestial pole and didn't move for a long time. She looked up with tired eyes. Senior Marshal brother, can we really go back? Of course. She answered without hesitation. The celestial pole is far enough from here. Even if it changed its position, so what? It might be farther away, but it might also be closer. With the means of nascent soul cultivators, distance alone can't stop us. We've always considered the dangers of the South Sea. Besides, we haven't tried the transporting formation Jing Xingji mentioned, so how do we know it's useless? Maybe the celestial pole is closer to Yuanzhou, and that transporting formation can still be used. I hope so. Emotinga sighed and waved her hand, erasing the map formed by spiritual aura. At that moment, a summoning talisman flew in from outside the door. She took it and flicked his finger. The summoning talisman burned by itself. An elder Yan's voice came out. Fellow Taoists, the trade fair has begun. Please come to the outer court. He let go of the ashes and smiled. Let's go. The Yuan State Commerce Alliance is well informed and has a wide influence. We still need to borrow their strength. Emotinga put away her melancholy and put the map into her Qingquan ring. The two of them went out together. After inquiring about the news that day, Yanfeng very warmly invited the three of them to stay at the city lord's mansion. He also told them that even though they were not Yuan state cultivators, they could still become immortal cities worshippers. Even if they were not willing to become immortal cities worshippers, they could still receive missions from the Merchant Alliance in exchange for rewards. Towards nascent soul cultivators, the Merchant Union was very courteous. Even if they didn't do anything, they could stay in the mayor's mansion's guest house without having to pay spirit stones. This made the three of them truly feel that the Yuan State Merchant Alliance's unique style of doing things was just like what Yanfeng had said, making friends and making money amicably. For the Merchant Union, it didn't cost too much to give the cultivators a little convenience, but if they roped in these high-level cultivators, they might be able to obtain a harvest that far exceeded their expectations. When they left the small courtyard where they were temporarily staying, Yanfeng was already waiting for them, followed by Jing Xingji. Under Yanfeng's lead, the three of them went to the center of the city lord's mansion. In Emotinga's eyes, the security of the city lord's mansion was very loose. Aside from a very powerful defensive formation outside, there were almost no other restrictions. Even the patrolling guards were very few. However, when they arrived at the center of the city lord's mansion, in front of a simple small building, the three of them immediately felt a powerful spiritual aura pressure. This spiritual aura pressure was far beyond the level of a nascent soul cultivator. In front of it, the three of them couldn't smoothly mobilize the spiritual aura inside their bodies, and their primordial spirits were also suppressed. Yanfeng saw their surprised expressions and said with a smile, "This building was left behind by a deification senior in our Chongling city before he passed away. It's also the most important place in our city lord's mansion. A deification senior? Jing Xingji was moved. Chongling City actually had a deification senior? Yen Feng was still smiling, but there was a hint of pride on his face. Yes, in the past tens of thousands of years, the only senior who clearly advanced to the deification realm in our Yuan state came from Chongling City. I see. I'm really sorry for not recognizing you. This small building should be a spatial magic weapon, similar to a portable immortal's cave. A portable immortal's cave like this was quite expensive, but it wasn't too rare. With the Yuan State's Merchant Union's financial resources, it could be built in any big immortal city. The most precious thing about this small building was the spiritual aura pressure given by a deification cultivator. With the existence of this spiritual aura pressure, the small building was absolutely safe. Yen Feng made an inviting gesture and led the three of them into the small building. The furnishings inside the building were simple, but it was far more spacious than it looked from the outside. A long table was placed in the center, and there were already more than 10 nascent soul cultivators on both sides of the table. Emotienga was a bit surprised. She didn't expect there to be so many nascent soul cultivators in Chongling City. It was completely comparable to the number 1 cultivation group in Yunzhong, Juyan sect. Moreover, many nascent soul cultivators were in closed-door meditation all year round, or traveling outside. It was absolutely impossible for all the nascent soul cultivators in Chongling City to gather in one trade fair. Based on this calculation, there were at least 70 or 80 nascent soul cultivators in Yuan State, which was not inferior to the Celestial Pole. Although the Celestial Pole couldn't compare to Yunzhong, its spirit veins, land and resources were much richer than Yuan State. No wonder the cultivators of the Yuan province were so protective of the cultivation system of the Yuan province. If it weren't for their unique system, the Yuan province wouldn't have such rich cultivation resources. And naturally, there wouldn't be so many nascent soul cultivators. Fellow Taoists. Yen Feng cupped his hands towards everyone. These three are new fellow Taoists in our Chongling City. It's their first time participating in our trade fair. Upon hearing Yen Feng's voice, all the nascent soul cultivators stood up to greet him. Once again, the three of them felt the difference in Yuan State. Almost everyone was as amiable and smiling as Yen Feng. Unlike other places where nascent soul cultivators were very arrogant, even when they saw cultivators in the same realm as them. After reporting their names, Yen Feng led the three of them to randomly find a place to sit. After a while, a few more cultivators arrived one after another. In the end, a smiling female cultivator slowly walked into the building. When everyone saw her, they all stood up to greet her. "This is the Lord of Chongling City," Yen Feng said to the three of them. Emotienga and the other two were a bit surprised. This female cultivator was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. She only had a delicate and pretty face. Judging from her appearance, she looked amiable and kind. She wasn't as kind and friendly as Yuanjun Miaoying from Jingshu School, nor was she as skillful as Bishuan Court's Wei Haolan. She wasn't even as sophisticated as Madame Chizu from Tianyin sect on North Pole Island. However, she had a calm and steady temperament, as steady as a mountain. Standing among the many male cultivators, she naturally had the temperament of a leader. In the cultivation world, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more there was no distinction between men and women. In the aura refining and foundation building realms, female cultivators usually had a slightly lower status. Things like being fancied by high-level cultivators and having no choice but to give themselves to them happen from time to time, but this kind of thing basically wouldn't happen in the core formation realm. Nevertheless, it was rare to see a female cultivator leading so many cultivators in the same realm as the Chongling City's lord. That was because female cultivators who cultivated to a high level were mostly people with firm Tao hearts, so they were rarely interested in matters of power. The Lord of Chongling City returned everyone's greetings. In the end, she smiled at Emotienga and the other two. "Fellow Taoists, you must be new fellow Taoists in my Chongling City, right? I'm Fang Qingyu, the Lord of Chongling City. Greetings." The three of them returned the greeting together. Jing Xingji said, "So it's Lord Fang. Nice to meet you." Under this Lord Feng's bearing, even Jing Xingji, whose eyes were filled with peach blossoms whenever he saw female cultivators, restrained himself. Feng Qingyu showed a faint smile. Presumably, Elder Yin has already explained the customs of my Yuan province. Fellow Taoists, please feel free to do as you please. There's no need to be restrained. Once she finished speaking, she no longer looked at them. She walked to the host's seat and stood still. She said, "Fellow Taoists, before the trade fair starts, I have something to say." She paused for a moment. Seeing that the hall was quiet and everyone was looking at her, she continued to speak. Several months ago, a major event happened. This event was related to the survival of my Yuan province. Because of this, all the nascent Empress elders of the Merchant Union have come out of their closed-door meditation. Upon hearing what she said, a few gasps rang out in the hall. The nascent Empress elders of the Merchant Union hadn't appeared in front of people for a long time. Fellow Taoists, regardless of whether you're an elder of Chongling City or not, whether you belong to the Merchant Union or not, as long as you've reached the nascent soul realm, you're the pillars of my Yuan province. All of you are qualified to know about this. Feng Qingyu's gaze swept through the crowd and stopped on Imo Tianga's group of three, revealing a smile on her face. Feng Qingyu withdrew her gaze and waved her hand. A map appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. Yuan Province, Yunzhong, Shaoyang, and the Celestial Pole were all marked. It was much more detailed than the map Imo Tianga gave them. Everyone, please take a look. This is the original map. Our Yuan Province was originally in this position. She pointed at the position of Yuan Province, then moved her finger, dragging Yuan Province below Yunzhong to the position of the Sea of Returning Ruins. This is our current position. She then erased Yunzhong and looked at everyone. Where did Yunzhong go? There's still no news from the Merchant Union. However, we found Shaoyang. Upon hearing this, everyone's spirit was shaken, and they all stared at her. Feng Qingyu, however, didn't look happy. She sighed, pointed at Xiaoyang's position, moved it slightly, and dragged it to the right. Xiaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's position. Imo Tianga looked at the map. Xiaoyang was much smaller than Yunzhong, and it wasn't like Yuan Province, which had a wide continent. Instead, it was composed of 3 islands of different sizes. These 3 islands were naturally much bigger than North Pole Island, but it was too far-fetched to call them continents. The original position of Yunzhong was empty, and it was surrounded by the sea. Before the 3 of them realized anything, someone shouted, "Castellan! Xiaoyang is a devil cultivator who runs amok. His methods are ruthless and overbearing. Now that he's our neighbor, This is exactly what the Merchant Union is worried about." Feng Qingyu looked worried, but her tone was still calm. Without Yunzhong, how could our Yuan province be called a trading continent? Now that we've become neighbors with Shaoyang, it's even more troublesome. Besides, she looked at Qinshi. The Sea of Returning Ruins overlaps with the Sea of Returning Ruins. The Merchant Union already has accurate information that the sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins haven't disappeared. They're now in the vicinity of Yuan Province. Upon hearing this news, the expressions of Imo Tianga and the other 2 slightly changed. Yunzhong disappeared, so Yuan Province couldn't trade. Shaoyang appeared as a great enemy, and there were also high-level sea beasts nearby. This was indeed a crisis related to the survival of Yuan Province. Chapter 516. The news of Xiaoyang's appearance shocked everyone present. Even the rare nascent Soul Realm trade fair that followed didn't have many people pay attention to it, and it ended hastily. The 3 of them returned to their temporary residence, laid down restrictions, then sat around the table. For a moment, the 3 of them had heavy hearts and did not speak. Originally, the crisis in Yuan Province had nothing to do with them, but if they were unable to leave, then it would be greatly related. "Tianga, what kind of place is Shaoyang in the end?" A moment later, Qinshi broke the silence. After he arrived at Yunzhong, he was busy healing his injuries at first, and then he entered the Returning Ruin Sea's mystic land, so he didn't know much about these things. Imo Tianga answered, "I only know that Owl Sun has barren mountains and unruly rivers. The atmosphere there is fierce, and there are many devil cultivators there. The situation is complicated, and the cultivators in Yunzhong are all unwilling to go to Al Sunday. As for the rest, I'm not very clear. Why don't you ask me instead of her? You've been in Yunzhong for so many years, yet not only do you know very little about Yuan province, but you also don't know anything about Shaoyang. That's right, Jing Xingji said as he cast a lazy glance at Emo Tiange. Emo Tiange didn't feel like paying attention to him. Although it had been so many years, she had only really lived in Yunzhong for 10 years when she traveled around the world. In those 10 years, she had traveled all over Yunzhong and had a deep understanding of Yunzhong. However, the Yuan State Merchant Union kept a low profile, and Xiaoyang didn't even want to talk to the cultivators of Yunzhong. She hadn't paid much attention to them, so how could she know? Jing Xingji said, Xiaoyang is different from Yunzhong and Yuanzhou. It's composed of 3 large islands of similar size, which are generally known as the 3 islands of Xiaoyang. There weren't any good spirit veins on the 3 islands of Xiaoyang, and the resources were also very poor. Just like the Western barbarians in the clouds, they had barren hills and unruly rivers, and the terrain was dangerous. In a place like this, no immortal cultivation sect would set up a base here. Only some small immortal cultivation clans and itinerant cultivators would settle here. Therefore, from the very beginning, Xiaoyang has been a gathering place for itinerant cultivators. Later, I don't know when it started, because Xiaoyang was far away from the sphere of influence of the major sects in Yunzhong. Many cultivators who couldn't gain a foothold in Yunzhong ran to Xiaoyang, and most of them were devil cultivators. Although the concept of righteousness and evil had been abandoned by the people of the current world, it was a fact that the majority of the people of the demonic path had extreme personalities and were ruthless in their actions. These devil cultivators and outlaws became the new residents of Xiaoyang's 3 islands. Over time, Xiaoyang became a sinister place that all the cultivators in the cloud hated and feared. At this point, Jing Xingji concluded, in short, there's only one word to describe Xiaoyang: dangerous. Natural hazards, geographical hazards, and human heart hazards. The perilous ones had barren mountains and unruly rivers, lacking in resources. The perilous ones had strange terrains and complicated relationships, making it difficult for other forces to intervene. The perilous ones had sinister hearts, and every single one of them was vicious and ruthless. Therefore, the major forces in Yunzhong were not willing to provoke the people of Xiaoyang. There were not enough benefits, and they were not easy to deal with. More importantly, the cultivators of Xiaoyang have a very bad habit: they love to rob. That's why the Yuanzhou Merchant Alliance is having such a headache? That's right, Jing Xingji said weakly. On the merchant continent, without a merchant partner, they've become neighbors with bandits, and there's also the dangerous sea of returning ruins. If they can't find a way out, Yuanzhou will be finished. As for us, if we don't leave Yuanzhou as soon as possible, we won't have good days in the future. That brings us back to the matter, Qin, she said. Tiange and I originally planned to return to the Celestial Pole after we left the Immortal Palace. This time we came to Yuanzhou by chance and happened to borrow the transporting formation you mentioned. Now our goal hasn't changed. We still have to explore whether this transporting formation can take us back to the Celestial Pole or not. He then looked at Jing Xingji. What about you? If the transporting formation is usable, do you want to go back to the Celestial Pole? Jing Xingji lowered his gaze and didn't say anything for a long time. The Celestial Pole. For him, that was a place he loved and hated. He would definitely go back, but now wasn't the time in his plan. If this matter hadn't happened, he would have definitely chosen to stay in Yuanzhou. But now, it wasn't appropriate to stay in Yuanzhou for a long time. We'll talk about it later. Jing Xingji took a deep breath. In a few days, we'll set off to find the transporting formation. Based on the current situation in Yuanzhou, the sooner we leave the better. Qin Shi nodded lightly and didn't say anything else. After staying for a few days, the 3 of them bid farewell to Yanfeng and left Chongling City. Yanfeng very enthusiastically urged them to stay, but unfortunately, they were determined to leave, so he couldn't persuade them. He could only send them off regretfully. Elder, it's not like we don't have 3 nascent soul cultivators in Chongling City. Why do you want them to stay? The cultivator next to Yin Feng asked in confusion. Yin Feng stared at the flight lights the three of them took off and sighed. If it was in the past, we naturally wouldn't have to do this. But now the situation is unclear. One more nascent soul cultivator means one more power. Your vision is still too narrow. When you look at things, you have to consider the situation. The cultivator thought for a while and somewhat understood, but he was even more confused. If we're talking about the situation, they can't even find Yunzhong now, so they can't leave Yuanzhou. Shouldn't they stay in the immortal city? Yin Feng was stunned and said with some uncertainty, maybe they want to find a place to cultivate. Although he said that, he didn't quite believe it himself. So what if they cultivated? If they came out 30 or 50 years later, the situation might not be better than it was now. They clearly knew they could endanger themselves, but they didn't do anything. This wasn't something a nascent soul cultivator would do. Could it be that the three of them had another purpose? The transporting formation Jingxingji discovered was located on a small island south of Chongling City. This small island didn't have any spirit veins, and was only inhabited by some mortals. When he was transported to this place back then, to prevent people from following him, he destroyed several parts of the transporting formation, and cautiously used magic to cover it up. Logically speaking, this small island didn't have any cultivators coming and going, and there were very few residents, so it shouldn't have been discovered. However, more than 80 years had passed, and no one could say for sure whether an accident would happen or not. Moreover, in the storm several months ago, many small islands disappeared. They didn't know whether this small island still existed or not. With such worries in mind, the three of them flew all the way, and finally found the small island without a hitch. Fortunately, the heavens didn't play with them again. The small island still existed, but it had become an uninhabited island. Under Jingxingji's lead, the three of them found the location of the transporting formation, inside a cave by the sea. When the tide rose, this cave would be submerged by seawater, and would only be exposed when the tide fell. Taking advantage of the falling tide, the three of them entered the cave, and went several miles deep before they reached their destination. This is it. Mo Tiange looked around. This cave was very damp, but because the terrain was upward, it wasn't soaked by seawater. Jingxingji said that when the tide rose, the seawater wouldn't submerge this place. Qinshi looked at the mountain wall and said, "It's a bit troublesome." Jingxingji, who was looking for traces left behind in the past, asked casually, "What's troublesome?" Qinshi pointed at the wet marks on the mountain wall and said, "Look, this should have been soaked recently. I reckon this cave wasn't spared from the storm several months ago. I wonder if the transporting formation was damaged or not. We'll know once we take a look." After finding the traces left behind in the past, Jingxingji waved his hand and unsheathed his sword. With a sword light, he swung it at a mountain wall. Rumble! The mountain wall collapsed with a loud bang. "Found it," Jingxingji said happily. Under the rubble, a star chart was vaguely visible. Mo Tiange waved her hand, sweeping away all the rubble, revealing the full appearance of the transporting formation. "How is it?" Jingxingji looked a little proud. "It's well preserved, right?" Mo Tiange carefully looked at the transporting formation on the ground, and didn't say anything for a long time. This transporting formation was about 15 feet in size. It used a special kind of colloid as a carrier, densely packed, and forming a complicated pattern. The places where spirit stones should have been embedded were empty, and the whole transporting formation was dim. "Good my ass." She pointed at several points on the transporting formation without looking up. "These places were destroyed by you, weren't they? You really picked the important places to destroy. And here, it should have been destroyed by the storm several months ago. Even the formation's base chart was washed away. It's not an exaggeration to say it's ruined. Then what should we do?" Jingxingji was dumbfounded. "This transporting formation can't be used anymore?" "Not yet." Mo Tiange softened her tone. She wasn't really angry with Jingxingji, but this guy's tone was really asking for a beating. She looked down at the formation chart on the ground and said, "If we can find the raw materials for the formation chart, it can still be repaired. However, I'm not very proficient in transporting formations, and there are a lot of places damaged, so it might take a long time to repair. How long? Qinshi asked. 10 days at least, several months at most, Emotinga said. Not counting the time to find the materials. Qinshi nodded. In the Immortal Palace, we waited for dozens of years, let alone this little bit of time. Tienga, you don't need to worry. At least now we see hope. Emotinga looked at him and sighed softly. I understand. Although she said that, her heart was still heavy. Not to mention whether this transporting formation could be repaired. Even if she finished repairing it without any mistakes, she wasn't sure whether it could still be used. In order to return to the celestial pole, she had waited for so long that she even doubted whether she could go back. Then should we go find the materials for the formation first? Jing Xingji asked, then shook his head. Forget it. You two stay here. I'll go find them. It'll save time. Emotinga didn't refuse. This transporting formation was very complicated. At the very least, it was left behind from the distant past era, so its materials must be very precious. The more precious the materials, the fewer the source. There wasn't much difference between one person looking for it and 3 people looking for it. It was better to stay here and study how to repair the damaged parts. Then I'll go. Jing Xingji scraped some of the materials for the formation, then turned around and left. Emotinga watched his back disappear, but she didn't withdraw her gaze until Qinshi asked her. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking, will he go back to the celestial pole with us? She looked at Qinshi with confusion. Why do I feel he's too proactive? Qinshi smiled. I can't answer that. This guy, who can say for sure? He paused for a moment, then sighed silently. But this transporting formation, whether it can send us back to the celestial pole or not, we owe him a big favor. In the Immortal Palace, he had saved Jing Xingji once. Later on, when they were in danger, Jing Xingji did not abandon them. He even risked his life in the heavenly tribulation and used his ultimate move. If that could be considered even, then now, he told them the location of the transporting formation and ran around for them. This favor couldn't be erased. Upon hearing this, Emotinga smiled. What are you afraid of? Owing him a favor is always better than owing him feelings. Besides, I'm afraid he doesn't even think about this favor, right? Chapter 517. Some people extended a helping hand because they regarded you as a friend. But if you kept thinking about returning the favor, it would hurt you instead. Despite Jing Xingji's frivolous appearance, his actions clearly showed that he regarded Qinshi as a friend. Qinshi spent half of his life crazily cultivating. He knew a lot of people, but he didn't have many friends. Jing Xingji was one of the few people he was willing to trust. Emotinga didn't want him to lose a friend because of this. The path to immortality was dangerous, but it didn't mean there was no family and friendship. Recalling what happened in Carefree Valley, if Tian Jiqian didn't misunderstand, how lucky he was to have a friend like Ling Yunha. Sincerity was even more valuable, because people's hearts were sinister. A ray of golden light appeared in the sky, rushing in the direction of Chongling City. Yan Feng looked up at the disappearing flight light, and secretly rejoiced that he had been restraining his breath, so the other party didn't notice him. This flight light should be fellow Taoist Jing's, right? He murmured. Why is he alone? After Emotinga and the other 2 left Chongling City, he ordered the cultivators under him to pay attention to their whereabouts. But how could it be easy to follow a nascent soul cultivator? It didn't take long for him to lose track of them. Yan Feng decided to act himself, wanting to see if the 3 of them had other purposes. Unexpectedly, he couldn't find any traces until he finally saw Jing Xingji's flight light. Judging from the direction of the flight light, it seemed to be heading toward Chongling City. Yan Feng hesitated for a moment and didn't follow. If they went back to Chongling City, Jing Xingji's whereabouts would be within their grasp with so many people in the merchant union. On the other hand, if Emotinga and Qinshi wanted to hide, it would be very difficult to find them. What were the 3 of them doing? Yan Feng didn't believe it was an internal conflict. This fellow Taoist Jing was only in the early stage of nascent soul. Even if he was a sword cultivator, He shouldn't be able to fight against the Qin couple. Besides, judging from his flight light, he didn't seem to be injured. After thinking for a while, Yanfeng waved his sleeves, released his flying magic weapon, and decided to take a look around. The Qin couple was nowhere to be seen, and he didn't know what they were doing. He couldn't be at ease if he wasn't sure. He sighed with some annoyance. Yuanzhou was facing a crisis, so he hoped these three people wouldn't harm Yuanzhou Merchant Union. Stepping on the flying artifact, he circled around the surrounding waters, but did not find anything unusual. Yanfeng thought to himself. Even though he was only in the early stages of the nascent soul realm, his divine sense was one of the strongest among the nascent soul realm cultivators in Chongling City. It seemed that the two of them had extraordinary breath-concealing techniques. He actually could not sense anything. Shaking his head, Zhang Xian was just about to return to Chongling City when he suddenly sensed something. Turning around, he stared at the distant sea, and his face warped in shock. The surface of the sea was calm, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, his divine sense could sense that there were many sea beasts nearby. The weakest of these sea beasts were only at the 1st or 2nd rank, while the strongest were at the 6th or 7th rank. There were even a few that were at the peak of the 7th rank, and were about to transform. Yanfeng stepped on his flying treasure, and flew towards the depths of the sea. The more he flew, the paler his face became. Finally, he stopped in his tracks, turned around, and rushed towards Chongling City. Jing Xingji left for 7 days before returning. During these 7 days, aside from cultivating and meditating, Mo Tiange studied the transporting formation. As for Qin Shi, he was focused on refining his vermilion bird bow. After obtaining the vermilion bird bow from the vermilion bird sacrificial temple, he spent many years slowly absorbing all the vermilion bird's breath, and could finally take the vermilion bird bow out of the yang spiritual bead. The vermilion bird's breath on the vermilion bird bow was very strong, and it was also combined with the yang spiritual bead, so its power was extraordinary. However, it was precisely because of its great power that it was difficult to control. During the heavenly tribulation that day, he could barely take the vermilion bird bow out of the yang spiritual bead. Even with the vermilion bird's flames on his body, he could only shoot one arrow. The power of that arrow actually scattered most of the golden lightning of the 9th layer of the heavenly tribulation. This made Qin Shi realize that if he could refine the vermilion bird bow to the point where he could control it at will, no one in the nascent soul realm would be able to resist his arrow with all his strength. Returning to the cave, Jing Xingji saw that Mo Tiange and Qin Shi were safe and sound inside the concealment formation. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Are you two okay?" Mo Tiange asked curiously, "What could happen? What happened to you?" Jing Xingji wiped his face, then casually sat down to rest. He looked a bit tired. Something big happened in Chongling City again. Oh no, something big happened in Yuan Province again. What happened? Qin Shi stopped cultivating and stared at him. Where should I start? Jing Xingji scratched his head, then said, "Forget it. Let's start from the beginning." On the day I returned to Chongling City, a large number of sea beasts appeared in the surrounding waters. These sea beasts were of both high and low ranks. They were densely packed and rushed ashore, attacking many mortals and low-level cultivators. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi glanced at each other. Both of them were a bit surprised. Every few decades or 100 years, demonic beast riots would occur in Kunwu. Could it be that Yuan Province was also the same? But judging from Jing Xingji's tone, this didn't seem to be normal. There's no demonic beast riot in Yuan Province. Jing Xingji knew what they were thinking, so he said, "The waters around Yuan Province have always been very peaceful. Such a thing has never happened before. Could it be because of the Sea of Returning Ruins?" Mo Tiange guessed. The Sea of Returning Ruins was originally the territory of high-rank sea beasts. Yuan Province continent suddenly appeared here. So these sea beasts attacked humans because their territory was occupied? Jing Xingji shook his head. If it was only the appearance of a lot of sea beasts, that might be the explanation. However, a few days later, I heard shocking news from the Castellan's mansion in Chongling City. He stared at Mo Tiange and Qin Shi and said slowly, "A new continent appeared south of Yuan Province. a continent occupied by demonic cultivators. What? Emotienga and Qin, she exclaimed at the same time. They looked at each other, both feeling incredulous. Since Yuan Province, Yunzhong, and Shaoyang had all moved, it wasn't strange for a new continent to appear. However, it was strange that this continent was occupied by demonic cultivators. In the celestial pole, Kunwu was the territory of cultivators, and a large number of demonic beasts lived in the forest south of Kunwu. Demonic cultivators were the best among demonic beasts. As far as they knew, although demonic cultivators and demonic beasts shared the same origin, their statuses were very different. In the eyes of demonic cultivators, even if they were of the same race, demonic beasts weren't their own kind. Only demonic cultivators who succeeded in taking human form could be considered their own kind. Therefore, demonic cultivators could be said to be a new race built on the basis of demonic beasts taking human forms. They broke away from their beast forms and possessed the same intelligence as humans, thus forming a new society. However, it was much harder for demonic beasts to take human forms than it was for human cultivators to form their nascent soul. If 1 out of tens of thousands of cultivators succeeded in forming their nascent soul, then only 1 out of hundreds of thousands of demonic beasts could cultivate to take human form. Moreover, they might not necessarily be able to pass the transformation, heavenly tribulation. Of course, demonic beasts had a much stronger reproductive ability than humans, and the number of low-ranked demonic beasts also far exceeded that of humans. Nevertheless, there were very few demonic beasts who could become demonic cultivators. There were about 100 nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole, but perhaps less than half of them were demonic cultivators. A continent was actually occupied by demonic cultivators. How many demonic beasts lived there? What about the human cultivators on this continent? Qinshi asked. Could it be that only a few of them reached the nascent soul realm? They actually let demonic cultivators occupy this continent. Jing Xingji shook his head. You guessed wrong. It's not that the human cultivators on this continent are too weak. It's that they don't exist at all. Qinshi was stunned. They don't exist? Yes, Jing Xingji said. Several months ago, after the continent shifted, Yuanzhou's merchant union sent people to explore the way. Those who went north found Shaoyang, and those who went south found this demonic cultivator continent. They ventured into this continent only to find demonic beasts and no humans at all. Qinshi sighed. Sure enough, the world is so big that nothing is too strange. I thought all continents were dominated by human cultivators. But as it turns out, there are still continents occupied by demonic cultivators. Is this related to the sea beasts? Emotienga asked. Could it be that these sea beasts aren't from the Sea of Returning Ruins, but from this demonic cultivator continent? Jing Xingji still shook his head. No, of course the sea beasts are from the Sea of Returning Ruins, but... He stopped, stretched out his hand in the air, and drew a simple map with his spiritual aura. Look, this is the Sea of Returning Ruins, and this is the demonic cultivator continent. Yunzhong used to be in this position. Did you see anything? Emotienga stared at the map for a long time and frowned. The reason why there are so many high-level sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins is because it's next to the demonic cultivator continent. Jing Xingji nodded, very satisfied with her cleverness. Yes, the people of Yuanzhou's merchant union found out that this time, the demonic cultivator continent only moved slightly to the north, but its position wasn't much different from before. It's still next to the Sea of Returning Ruins. Before, Yunzhong's people only knew that the Sea of Returning Ruins was dangerous, and there were many high-level sea beasts. But they didn't know that was because there was a demonic cultivator continent in the Sea of Returning Ruins. So the demonic cultivator continent also discovered the existence of Yuanzhou? Qinshi asked. Did they mobilize so many sea beasts to occupy Yuanzhou? Jing Xingji smiled bitterly. It's very possible. When it rains, it pours. I'm afraid Yuanzhou is doomed. There's Shaoyang in front and demonic cultivator continent in the back. Let alone maintaining its current prosperity. Whether it can protect itself has become a problem. The three of them were silent. They saw the prosperity of Yuanzhou with their own eyes, But the development of the situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous to Yuanzhou. They could almost imagine that in a few decades, or even a few years, Yuanzhou would be in chaos, and its talents would wither. As the same kind, they naturally didn't want Yuanzhou to be occupied by demonic cultivators. However, the fate of an entire continent wasn't something they could change. What about the past few days? How's the situation? Qin asked after a long silence. Jing Xingji sighed. It's passable. Right now, no demonic beasts above the 8th rank have appeared, and there are so many nascent soul cultivators in Chongling City, so it's naturally fine. However, the surrounding islands were in a miserable state. Many mortals and cultivators were killed or injured. The survivors were all moved to Chongling City. Right now, Chongling City is heavily guarded. If I didn't take the opportunity to kill sea beasts to leave, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to get out. Did you get that thing? Emotinga asked. The situation was chaotic. Presumably, most of Chongling City's commercial market was also closed. If she didn't buy the thing to lay a formation, it would be difficult. Of course. Jing Xingji spread out his hand, revealing a transparent yellow object lying in his palm. The merchant continent truly lives up to its reputation. I took this object and asked around, and someone told me it was called jade rosin. It's a top-notch material for setting up arrays. After some trouble, I finally managed to buy it. Chapter 518. After the appearance of the demon cultivator continent, the situation in Yuan province became more and more dangerous. Due to the large-scale attacks of sea beasts, the once prosperous islands in Yuan province moved inland one after another. In the end, except for several large islands, all the residents on the small islands moved to the land. Yuan Province Merchant Union sent cultivators to take over those large islands. Almost every island had a nascent soul cultivator overseeing it. Emotinga and the other two hid in the cave. The concealment formation completely concealed the spiritual aura around them, so they weren't discovered by sea beasts or cultivators. Qin Shi and Jing Xingji took turns going out to gather information, while Emotinga focused on repairing the formation. The complexity of this formation exceeded their expectations. After a month, they only repaired 1/3 of it. Although they were anxious, they could only wait patiently. This transporting formation was their hope to leave Yuan province. If it didn't work, they could only risk crossing the sea and go to Shaoyang. Shaoyang was a dangerous place that cultivators in Yunzhong didn't even want to mention, so it was obvious how chaotic it was. Moreover, even if they went to Shaoyang, they might not be able to find the location of the celestial pole. If it wasn't necessary, they wouldn't choose this path. Qin Shi stood in the air, riding the wind and looking at the vast sea. From time to time, cultivators flew by. These were the troops sent by Yuan Province Merchant Union to clean up the sea beasts in the vicinity. The appearance of a large number of sea beasts made Yuan Province Merchant Union's hesitation about whether to hide the news or not lose its meaning. Compared to the appearance of Shaoyang and the demon cultivator continent, the disappearance of Yunzhong became insignificant. Without Yunzhong, they had to find another way out and couldn't maintain Yuan Province's prosperity. The existence of Shaoyang and the demon cultivator continent, on the other hand, threatened their survival. For this reason, Yuan Province Merchant Union had to change its way of doing things. In the past, Yuan Province was prosperous and famous for its freedom and safety. Even those with low cultivation levels could establish a foothold in Yuan Province, as long as they had the ability to do business. Yuan Province Merchant Union was very strict about killing people for no reason, and was very protective of low-level cultivators. But now, Yuan Province was facing a severe survival crisis, and the ability to kill had become the foundation of their foothold. Therefore, the status of powerful cultivators was greatly improved, while low-level cultivators had to pay more taxes. Thinking up to this point, Qin Shi sighed. If this went on, the peaceful atmosphere in Yuan Province would be completely destroyed, and it would be no different from that in the Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole. In fact, it would be even crueler. Spreading out his divine sense, He could sense the fluctuations of spiritual energy from a battle in the distance. It was the battle between the cultivators and the sea beasts. After thinking for a while, he decided to disguise himself as a Foundation establishment cultivator and head to Chongling City to gather information. Before the teleportation portal was repaired, it was not suitable for the three of them to appear again. Otherwise, with their cultivation, how could the Yuan State Merchant Alliance let them go? This was the Yuan province after all. If he forcefully refused, it would not be a good thing to become enemies with the Yuan Province Merchant Union. The best way was to make the three disappear. In the face of danger, the Yuan State Merchant Union would not waste time on them. But in the next moment, he stopped and turned his head to look at the source of the spiritual qi. 8th rank demonic beast, he muttered to himself. At that moment, the auras of those cultivators suddenly disappeared. Then, a powerful spiritual aura of a demonic beast appeared. Those cultivators consisted of Foundation establishment cultivators and core formation cultivators. Logically speaking, clearing the nearby sea beasts shouldn't be a problem. Even if there was a crisis, they wouldn't be completely wiped out. But now, with the appearance of a rank 8 demonic beast, everything was different. The real beast cultivators appeared. Did this mean that the battle had escalated? He restrained his aura and looked towards Chongling City. Not long after, several more dazzling conveyance lights rose up from the Chongling City and rushed toward them. Nascent soul cultivators were also going to participate in the battle. After thinking for a while, Qinshi turned around and flew towards the hidden cave on the island. Back in the cave, Mo Tiange was still concentrating on repairing the formation, while Jing Xingji was cultivating on the side, acting as a protector. You're back. Sensing his aura, Jing Xingji opened his eyes. Nothing changed, right? Yes. Qinshi's answer disappointed him. An 8th rank demonic beast appeared. Upon hearing this, Mo Tiange stopped repairing the formation and turned around. Is it that serious? Qinshi nodded. The appearance of an 8th rank demonic beast means that beast cultivators have begun to attack Yuan province. Now, Yuan province's nascent soul cultivators have also been mobilized. The real battle is about to begin. The three of them looked at each other, each frowning. Although they had long anticipated this day, they didn't expect it to come so soon. If beast cultivators and nascent soul cultivators participated in the battle, it would be very tragic. If they didn't leave as soon as possible, they would inevitably be involved. There's no time, Jing Xingji said, looking at Mo Tiange. When will this transporting formation be repaired? 2 months. Mo Tiange was a bit helpless. This can't be rushed. The more advanced the formation, the more complicated it was. Yuan province was so far from the celestial pole, so the complexity of this transporting formation could be imagined. The more rushed it was, the easier it was to make mistakes. Otherwise, you guys can also help. She thought for a while, then said, I've already drawn the pattern of the formation in some places. You only need to follow it. You don't need to have a very high attainment in formations. Qinshi agreed. As a high-level cultivator, he still had basic knowledge about formations. It wasn't difficult to follow the pattern. Jing Xingji thought for a while, then said with embarrassment, I know nothing about formations. I can't do this. Then you'll be responsible for our safety, and inquire about information while you're at it. Mo Tiange didn't make things difficult for him. After getting along with him for several decades, she already knew him very well. This guy was completely uninterested in anything other than fighting. She once asked him what to do if he encountered an enemy who was good at using formations. Jing Xingji answered without hesitation that one sword to break all techniques was the highest realm for sword cultivators. If he was helpless when encountering an enemy who was good at using strange techniques, it could only mean that the sword in his hand wasn't strong enough. Mo Tiange could only sigh in admiration. However, in this world, stubborn people weren't the same as success. Successful people were certainly persistent. If he walked this path until the end, maybe he would really find a way out. After this matter was settled, Qinshi joined the ranks of repairing the transporting formation. Every day, Mo Tiange studied the formation pattern and let Qinshi repair it. If there were any mistakes, they would try again. It was impossible to repair such a complicated formation without any mistakes. This transporting formation was too old, and some of the formation techniques were different from today's. Aside from testing them one by one, there was no other way. As a result, the materials used for the formation were consumed very quickly. The formation was only half finished, but the jade rosin was already used up. There weren't many other materials left. Emotienga had no choice but to temporarily stop repairing the transporting formation. She gave the list of materials needed to Jingxingji and told him to go to Chongling City to purchase them. This guy was good at disguise. Back then, when he disguised himself as Jianxin, Emotienga and Nie Wushang obviously knew him, but they were both fooled. Nie Wushang, in particular, was proficient in illusory techniques and disguise techniques, but she didn't suspect him at all. From this, it could be seen how brilliant his disguise technique was. This kind of thing was most suitable for him. Emotienga was mentally exhausted after staying in the cave to repair the formation for more than 2 months. Now that she finally had some free time, she decided to go out and take a breather. Qinshi accompanied her. The two of them restrained their breaths and cautiously walked around the area. Perhaps there was no war today, or the front line wasn't here, but the surrounding sea area was very quiet. Not only were there no cultivators, but there were also no traces of sea beasts. Emotienga was bored, so she took out the 10,000 miles solitary boat from her universe ring and sat inside with Qinshi. She didn't use spiritual aura to control the boat and just floated on the water. This 10,000 miles solitary boat was made from black iron heartwood she found in Shi when she traveled to Yunzhong. Black iron heartwood was extremely hard and could defend against gales and huge waves on the sea. She originally found someone to refine it for crossing the South Sea, but she didn't expect the world to be fickle. As soon as she left Immortal Palace, she accidentally arrived in Yuan Province and didn't have a chance to use it. After looking at the 10,000 miles solitary boat for a while, Qinshi asked, "I've been so busy these days that I forgot your offensive magic weapons are almost destroyed. Do you have any ideas?" Emotienga leaned against the side of the boat, stirring the seawater as she answered carelessly, "What else can I do? I can only refine them again." "I know. I mean, what kind of magic weapon should I refine? Do you have an idea?" Emotienga pondered for a while, then said, "I've thought about it. If it's powerful enough, I don't need too many magic weapons. Take you for example. Although you have a lot of means, most of your divine abilities are on the 3-yang real fire sword, and now you only have the vermilion bird bow. But these 2 magic weapons are enough for you to stand firm among nascent soul cultivators. As for me, I have a lot of magic weapons, but I don't have 1 or 2 trump cards. Although my fighting ability isn't weak, I'm always a bit lacking in deterrence." Qinshi smiled. "You're right to think like that. However, our personalities are different, so we can't be lumped together. I pursue the power to kill in one strike, but you pay more attention to comprehensive abilities. In fights of magical power, you don't use thunderous methods and focus on stability. If you only focus on 1 or 2 magic weapons in the future, can you adapt to the new way of fights of magical power?" Emotienga smiled and spread her hand. Spiritual aura gathered in her palm, and the heaven and earth fan slowly emerged. After these days of nourishment, the heaven and earth fan had recovered some spiritual aura and was no longer dim. She opened the fan and said, "Although this heaven and earth fan is only a magic weapon, it can attack and defend, trap and kill. If I use it well, it's the same as having many magic weapons." "If you put it that way, that makes sense." Qinshi reached out, took the heaven and earth fan, and looked at it carefully. He was puzzled. That day the azure dragon clearly appeared. But why can't I feel its breath? Maybe it's because I haven't been able to tap its potential. Emotienga was also puzzled. If I can find a way to summon the azure dragon, this magic weapon of mine, even if it can't compare to your vermilion bird bow, can at least fight it. The vermilion bird bow was forged by ancient cultivators, and its refining method was much more brilliant than the heaven and earth fan. In this regard, the heaven and earth fan couldn't compare. Also, Emotienga said hesitantly, Before Master Fu Yaozi disappeared that day, he passed his secret techniques to me, including some magic weapons suitable for the body of origin. It's just that the materials are too difficult to find. Chapter 519. All of a sudden, a dazzling flight light appeared on the horizon, rushing towards them. Behind this flight light were two rays of light, one green and one red, which carried the unique aura of demonic beasts. Emotienga and Qinxi's expressions turned serious when they saw them. Needless to say, Qinxi summoned his flying cloud and flew up. Emotienga also put away her 10,000 miles solitary boat and went to meet them. The one who came was Jingxingji. They were already very familiar with this flight light. But what was going on behind him? Were they targeted by demonic cultivators? 9th-ranked demonic beasts. As the flight light got closer and closer, the two of them looked at each other and took out their magic weapons. Emotienga also released her jade bone puppet. Upon seeing them, Jingxingji was overjoyed. "Quick, kill them." Qinxi frowned and asked him, "How did you provoke them? They're actually two 9th-ranked demonic beasts." "I'll tell you later." Jingxingji shook his arm, and the sword intent around him became fierce and murderous. Emotienga and Qinxi had been restraining their auras. These two demonic beasts chased Jingxingji all the way here. Although they noticed them early on, they didn't take them seriously. It wasn't until now that they stopped restraining their auras that they realized these two human cultivators had a cultivation level similar to theirs. However, it was too late. Qinxi and Emotienga had already taken action. The two of them blocked their escape route, one on the left and the other on the right. With a whistling sound, Jingxingji's body burst with dazzling sword light. In an instant, it transformed into countless sword lights and attacked the nearest blue demonic beast. These two demonic beasts originally looked like humans. Seeing their escape route was blocked, they made a prompt decision to show their true forms and went to meet them. They were 9th-ranked demonic cultivators with extremely high intelligence. Seeing that Qinxi was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, and Emotienga had a jade bone puppet, they immediately planned to attack Jingxingji and break out of the encirclement. Unfortunately, although they reacted quickly, Qinxi was already prepared. With a wave of his sleeve, the three young real fire appeared out of thin air and transformed into invisible sword lights, rushing towards the red demonic beast behind them. Upon seeing this, the red demonic beast had to retreat several feet to avoid the sword lights. Their joint attack instantly failed, and the blue demonic beast in front had to face Jingxingji alone. Although his cultivation level was slightly lower than that of the green demonic beast, a sword cultivator's battle prowess and powerful body were more than enough to make up for this gap. In reality, if not for encountering two Tier 9 demon beasts at the same time, Jingxingji wouldn't need to flee at all. Right now, with Qinxi dealing with the red demonic beast in the back, he alone was enough to deal with this cyan demonic beast. Emotienga held the heaven and earth fan in her hand and didn't participate in the battle. The jade bone puppet was also standing quietly not far from her. Her magic weapons were all destroyed, and Qinxi and Jingxingji could handle the situation in front of them. There was no need for them to intervene. She and the jade bone puppet were standing in a very delicate position, blocking the two demonic beasts' path. Just by standing there, they were able to restrict the two demonic beasts. Humph! Jingxingji gnashed his teeth. His sword light was like a torrential downpour as it struck the green demonic beast. He was not a person who was willing to suffer a loss. He had been chased by these two demonic beasts all the way, and had a belly full of anger. Now that there was a chance for revenge, how could he let it go? In the face of Jingxingji's attack, the green demonic beast opened its mouth, and a gale rose to meet the sword light. It turned out to be a demonic beast that only practiced wind element magic. The sword light was blocked by the wind shield. Jingxingji sneered. Instead of retreating, he advanced and rushed towards the green demonic beast. Swish! The sword light approached inch by inch, wanting to tear the wind shield apart. On Qinxi's side, it was a demonic beast with fire element. Demonic beasts with fire element had always been the most difficult to deal with. Unfortunately, it encountered Qinxi, Which fire in the world could compare to the vermilion bird's flame? With one strike, the demonic beast's fire technique was completely dispersed. This made the red demonic beast extremely surprised. It paused for a moment, then asked, "You're a human, so why does your real fire have the aura of a divine beast?" The demonic beast's innate intuition made it feel that the grade of Qin Shi's real fire was far above its own. Moreover, it had a powerful aura of a divine beast. However, compared to the three demonic cultivators in the secret place of returning ruined sea, it was a bit inferior. As soon as the three demonic cultivators fought with Qin Shi, they recognized the aura of his real fire. It belonged to the vermilion bird, but this demonic beast didn't have the experience of ancient demonic cultivators. "Why should I explain it to you?" Qin Shi said faintly. The demonic beast wanted to say something, but Emotinga turned her head and saw two flight lights appearing in the direction of Chongling City. Their momentum was very strong, so they must be nascent soul cultivators. She shouted, "Finish this quickly. Someone's coming." It wouldn't be good to run into nascent soul cultivators of Chongling City at this time. Upon hearing this, Qin Shi glanced at those flight lights. The three young real fire swords' light shone brightly. One turned into two turned into four, and suddenly, it turned into hundreds of sword lights, forming a sword formation that covered the head of the red demonic beast. The demonic beast was shocked. Qin Shi's vermilion bird's flame was of a higher grade than its real fire, so it was already at a disadvantage. However, Qin Shi's sword formation was extremely sharp. In a moment of desperation, it opened its mouth and spat out a huge red inner core, planning to launch a life-risking attack. Emotinga's expression changed slightly. If a ninth-ranked demonic beast exploded its inner core, the three of them would be seriously injured at such a close distance. Qin Shi reacted quickly. The moment he saw the demonic beast's inner core, a vermilion bird's flame suddenly sprang up and swallowed the beast's core. Boom! The beast's core exploded. Unfortunately, when it exploded, it was already surrounded by the vermilion bird's flame. The vermilion bird's flame swayed, but it swallowed all the spiritual aura in the fire attribute beast's core. Losing its inner core was tantamount to losing its cultivation level. Its huge body fell towards the sea. The three young real fire swords' sword lights merged into its body. With a stab and a flick, it quickly killed the demonic beast. After killing one demonic beast, the rest was easy. Qin Shi and Jing Xingji jointly attacked and killed the green demonic beast in 2 or 3 moves. Soon after, they put away the 2 demonic beasts' corpses. The 3 of them immediately concealed their breaths and fled towards the hidden cave on the island. Not long after their figures disappeared, 2 nascent soul cultivators arrived. They were a man and a woman. They were Chongling City Lord Fang Qingyu and Elder Yanfeng. Standing in midair, Fang Qingyu looked at the bloodstains on the sea in silence. "Lord," Yanfeng said in a low voice, "these 3 people must be the Qin couple and fellow Taoist Jing." Fang Qingyu nodded lightly and sighed. "I really didn't realize they had this kind of strength before. 2 ninth-ranked demonic beasts were killed so easily. What a pity, what a pity." Ninth-ranked demonic beasts were equivalent to middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. Even if they outnumbered them, being able to kill them so quickly showed their strength. Yanfeng frowned and said, "I really don't understand. What do they want to do? In the current situation, Yuan province is in chaos. Can they do anything good? Why don't they join hands with us?" Fang Qingyu smiled and said, "They have other plans, so there's no need to force them. At the very least, we're certain they won't be our enemies. Be that as it may, but no need to say any more." Fang Qingyu raised his hand and interrupted Yanfeng. "Not to mention that they're not Yuan province cultivators. But even if they were, we wouldn't care. This time, they killed 2 ninth-ranked demonic beasts, which helped us a lot. There's no need to haggle over it." Yanfeng was silent. In the end, he sighed helplessly. "Yes, Castellan." Fang Qingyu waved her hand, then turned around and flew back to Chongling City. "Let's go back. We still have a lot of things to do, so we don't need to care about them." At this time, Emotienga and the other 2 had already returned to the cave, where the transporting formation was located. "What happened?" Emotienga asked. "Didn't you go to Chongling City to buy things?" How did you provoke a beast cultivator? Moreover, his cultivation level was in the 9th rank. Jing Xingji said with an innocent expression. I went to buy things, but wasn't it convenient? I just went to scout the situation and see how the fight was going. Who would have thought that I would run into 2 high-ranked demonic beasts when I went there? It was obviously very peaceful recently. Mo Tiange was speechless for a while, then asked, Did you buy that thing? Of course. Jing Xingji took out a qianquan bag from his robe and threw it to her. Take a look. Is it enough? Mo Tiange opened the qianquan bag and nodded. It should be enough. She then asked curiously, Didn't they say most of Chongling City's markets are closed? How did you get it in such a short time? Jing Xingji looked complacent. It's a secret. I won't tell you. Mo Tiange really wanted to pour a basin of water on his head when she saw his expression. All right, she said in a timely manner. Our whereabouts have been discovered. As long as they're not stupid, those people will definitely guess it's us. We'd better not go out and quickly repair the transporting formation so we can leave. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if we get involved. Mo Tiange agreed. If nothing unexpected happens, the things we bought this time should be enough to repair the transporting formation. Good. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. The situation in Yuan province was getting more and more serious day by day. With the appearance of a 9th-ranked demonic beast, presumably all the beast cultivators in the demonic cultivator continent had been mobilized. In fact, the demonic cultivator continent wasn't as poor in resources as Yuan province, but human cultivators and demonic beasts were natural enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. There was no need to distinguish between right and wrong. Moreover, after killing demonic beasts, human cultivators could use the demonic beasts' inner cores and bodies to refine medicinal pills or magic weapons, which would help with their cultivation. As for demonic beasts, they only had tyrannical bodies. They couldn't refine tools or concoct medicinal pills. Not to mention Yuan province was so rich. Even a place as barren as Al Sun was still worth fighting over. After killing human cultivators, the beast cultivators could obtain medicinal pills and magic weapons that they couldn't refine at all. Moreover, the inner cores of high-level cultivators were also great supplements for beast cultivators. Since both sides could increase their cultivation levels by killing each other, fighting each other became a matter of course. Regardless of the escalating battle between Yuan province and the demonic cultivator continent, Mo Tiange and the other 2 holed up in the hidden cave, immersing themselves in repairing the transporting formation. They never went out again. After more than a month of rushing work, they finally finished repairing the formation. 1 high-grade spirit stone after another was put into the recess of the transporting formation, and the formation suddenly lit up. Upon seeing this light, Mo Tiange heaved a sigh of relief. This at least proved that she didn't make a mistake with this transporting formation. Of course, this wasn't enough. She didn't know whether the transporting formation in the celestial pole was still intact, or whether the celestial pole was still in its original place. If it was like Yunzhong, further away from Yuan province, then even if the 2 transporting formations were intact, they still wouldn't be able to be used. However, it was useless to think too much. Whether this formation was effective or not, they'd know after trying it. Fellow Taoist Jing, Mo Tiange asked while standing on the transporting formation with Qin Shi. What about you? Are you coming or not? Chapter 520. Jing Xingji didn't answer immediately. Mo Tiange said, This kind of long-distance transporting formation costs more than 100 high-grade spirit stones. I know you don't care about these spirit stones now, but you don't have to waste them, right? Originally, he was a little sad, but in the end, it was destroyed by Mo Tiange's words. Jing Xingji glared at Qin Shi rather angrily. Qin Shi just smiled and looked at him, waiting for an answer. They both knew that returning to the celestial pole wasn't a simple decision for Jing Xingji. However, given the situation in Yuan province, if he stayed, he wouldn't be able to cultivate in peace. For a long time, Jing Xingji still didn't say anything. Mo Tiange sighed and said, Forget it. We don't know whether this transporting formation works or not. In any case, it's not like you can't afford the spirit stones. Let's give it a try first. If it goes well, we'll leave first. You can do as you see fit. Jing Xingji heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. You can go. Emotinga no longer hesitated. She directed a beam of spiritual aura at a certain spot on the formation map. The transporting formation lit up with white light, engulfing her and Qin Shi. Inside the white light, they felt slightly uncomfortable and dizzy, but Emotinga was pleasantly surprised. Long-distance transporting formations required a lot of spiritual aura, so the movement it caused was naturally bigger. For places as far as Yuan Province and the Celestial Pole, the spiritual aura fluctuations produced were definitely not something low-level cultivators could bear. Even nascent soul cultivators like them would be affected, but because of this, she was sure this transporting formation could be used. Inside the dazzling white light, Qin Shi held her hand. The two of them silently endured the pressure of the transporting formation. Before long, the uncomfortable feeling slowly faded away, and the spiritual aura also calmed down. Emotinga opened her eyes. The white light of the transporting formation dissipated. Under their feet was an ancient transporting formation, exactly the same as the one before. She and Qin Shi glanced at each other, both of them revealing relieved expressions. After so many freak accidents, this time, the heavens finally didn't play with them again. This transporting formation was also located in a cave. However, this cave wasn't deep. It was only the size of a cultivator's immortal's cave. The cave was empty. There was nothing else. The entrance of the cave was completely covered by vines, and only a dim light could be seen coming in. It was very dim. Qin Shi summoned his 3-yong real fire sword, stretched out his hand, and brushed away the vines. He looked left and right, then said, "I'm fine. Let's go out." Right after he finished speaking, he went out of the cave first. Emotinga followed closely behind him. As soon as they left the cave, they couldn't help but narrow their eyes. Before the teleportation, they had stayed in the secret cave by the sea for more than a month, and had not gone out. The light in the cave was very dim, but outside it was bright and sunny. They were not used to it. Emotinga raised her head and looked around. She felt that her surroundings were very familiar. She seemed to have seen this kind of landscape and this kind of vegetation somewhere before. The two of them covered up the entrance of the cave again. After walking for a while, they flew into the air to prevent others from discovering the teleportation array. So it's here. Looking down from the sky, the surrounding terrain was clear at a glance, so Emotinga immediately recognized this place. This teleportation array was actually located at the foot of Demonic Mountain. Demonic Mountain was huge, and the terrain was very complicated. In addition, this place was close to restrictions, so normally, no one would come here. No one would have thought that there was actually an intact ancient teleportation array hidden here. Jing Xingji said he found this teleportation array when he was adventuring in the past. Now that the two of them found the teleportation array on Demonic Mountain, it wasn't difficult to guess what happened. That year, when the restrictions on Demonic Mountain collapsed, Jing Xingji came out in advance and escaped. However, he didn't return to Gujin sect. Maybe he was hiding nearby to recuperate and cultivate, and that was how he found this teleportation array. As for Venerable Swordsman Fuling, who died on Demonic Mountain, his disciple took Tang Shen to Yuhing Mountain to recuperate. Later, the two of them met and fought. Jing Xingji killed his opponent, so he snatched Tang Shen. After that, Tang Shen sent a message for help, and Emotinga rushed over. Jing Xingji let Tang Shen go and left alone. He had many enemies in Gujian sect, and he was accused of killing his fellow disciples. So he simply used the teleportation array to leave the celestial pole. When Emotinga saw Jianxin, it was only 2 or 3 years ago. At that time, Jing Xingji had already gone from Yuanzhou to Yunzhong. He must have left the celestial pole after they separated that year. Fortunately, Jing Xingji found this teleportation array. Otherwise, the two of them would have really been trapped in Yuanzhou. Qin Shi looked at Demonic Mountain and sighed. We're finally back. Emotinga was also very excited. Back then, when she left the celestial pole, she wasn't even 100 years old. In the blink of an eye, 80 to 90 years had passed. 80 to 90 years wasn't much for most nascent soul cultivators, but for her, it was half of her life. In addition to her excitement, she also felt relieved. The reason why she didn't return to the celestial pole was because she still had a mission to complete. The restriction Wanderer Ziwei left in her mind was a shadow she couldn't get rid of. Even if she had a bright future, she still had to worry about the restriction flaring up and dying. Now that she was back in the celestial pole, she still had 50 years left. She also advanced to the nascent soul realm, so completing this mission wouldn't be so difficult. Once the restriction was removed, and she was no longer under the control of others, she would be able to cultivate without any scruples and pursue the great Tao. I really didn't expect I'd be gone for so long. Emotienga smiled as she looked at Demonic Mountain under her feet. Demonic Mountain was also the place where they made love. It had extraordinary significance. Yes, not to mention you, I've been gone for almost 40 years, she said with a smile. Let's go back to Xianqing school. Master must have nagged me for a long time since we've been back. Thinking about Lord Taoist Jinghe, Emotienga couldn't help but smile. She hadn't seen her master for a long time, so she also missed him very much. Now that he was a great late nascent soul cultivator, she wondered if her master was still as unruly as before. He must be very proud of himself, right? For someone like her master, whose aptitude was obviously outstanding, but his fated chances were always a step behind others. He was always one step behind others, so he always felt unconvinced. Now that he advanced to the late stage, he would definitely brag and be very proud of himself. The two of them were so excited that they didn't even bother to pay attention to Tiandao sect, which was right in front of them. They turned into two flight lights and rushed towards West Kunwu. A nascent soul cultivator from Tiandao sect was alarmed when he sensed their powerful aura. He rushed out of his immortal's cave, but he only saw two flight lights, one red and one white, disappearing into the horizon. That's strange. On a certain independent mountain peak in Tiandao sect, a bald male cultivator muttered to himself. Why did two nascent soul cultivators suddenly appear near the gate? Moreover, one of them was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, and had a very powerful aura. Senior Martial Brother Liu, a red-clothed female cultivator, stepped on a red lotus and flew over from another mountain peak. She anxiously asked, "What's going on? Why did a nascent soul cultivator appear near the sect?" The bald male cultivator shook his head. "I'm the same as you. I also just sensed the appearance of cultivators in the same realm. One of them is in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, right? Where did those two people come from in the end? I've never heard of cultivators from any cultivation group coming to Tiandao sect. Moreover, why didn't they pay us a visit after coming to Tiandao sect?" The bald male cultivator also couldn't answer these questions. He pondered for a moment, then said, "Let's keep an eye out for now. Right now, only the two of us are left in the sect, so we have to be extra careful. However, we don't have to worry too much. Even if those two people came with bad intentions, with Tiandao sect's great mountain protecting formation, and the two of us guarding it, there won't be any problems." All right. The red-clothed female cultivator also couldn't think of a better idea. She stared in the direction of the spiritual aura fluctuation, then sighed. "I wonder how Senior Martial Brother Liu and the others are doing. I hope they'll be fine." Emotienga and Qinshi were anxious to return home, so they flew almost at full speed. Nascent soul cultivators were extremely fast, so in just 2 days, they arrived at Kuanzhong City. They weren't in the mood to rest, but they also didn't feel tired. They still planned to fly over Kuanzhong City and directly return to Xianqing School. Who would have thought that as they approached Kuanzhong City, 3 flight lights would suddenly appear from the city and fly towards them. These 3 flight lights had extremely strong momentum. They were all nascent soul cultivators, and one of them was even in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Moreover, their target was very obvious. They were coming for them. Emotienga and Qinshi glanced at each other, frowning slightly. Since when were there nascent soul cultivators in Kuanzhong City? Moreover, there were 3 of them? Could it be that something big happened in Kunwu during the several decades they weren't there? Stop. The flight lights hadn't arrived yet, but the voice had. Qin paused for a moment, then pulled Emotienga to a stop. Let's take a look first. In the celestial pole, they weren't cultivators without foundation. There were more or less friendships between the various cultivation groups, so they couldn't act according to their temperament. For the sake of their cultivation groups, they still had to put on a show. The people coming were very fast. In an instant, they were in front of them. The one in the lead was a white-clothed, middle-aged scholar with a graceful bearing. He was holding a jade flute. He was Feng Xiao, one of the Luan Feng immortal companions of Biyun sect. Qin also recognized the two nascent soul cultivators who came with him. One was Gujian sect's sword Venerable Xiaohe, and the other was an individual cultivator, Wanderer Qing Ming. This was really strange. Qin was even more puzzled. Although most nascent soul cultivators from Biyun sect, Gujian sect, and individual cultivators had a bit of friendship with each other, these three people couldn't be considered friends. How could they appear together in Kuanzhong City? Upon seeing the two of them, surprise flashed through Feng Zhao's eyes. He said with uncertainty, "You're that brat from Qing clan?" Feng Xiao was a cultivator from the same generation as Lord Taoist Jinghe, so he was almost 1,000 years old. Qin was just a little over 300 years old now. Before he entered the immortal school, Feng Xiao was already a nascent soul cultivator, so it wasn't too much to call him a brat from Qing clan. However, among cultivators, seniority was determined by cultivation level. Now Qin was the same as him. They were both in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. After a short pause, Feng Xiao smiled and corrected himself. "Oh no, I should call you fellow Taoist Shojing now. I heard from fellow Taoist Jinghe that you left the mountain to travel. Did you just come back?" So it's Senior Feng. Feng Xiao had some friendship with Lord Taoist Jinghe. In the past, Qin always acted like a junior in front of him. Now he naturally called him senior, and answered, "Yes, I just came back from traveling and am about to return to Xianqing School. What happened in the end? Why is senior in Kuanzhong City? You and I are already cultivators in the same realm. Brat, you don't have to call me senior anymore," Feng Xiao said with a smile. His gaze swept over Emotienga. "Since it's you, there's no need to stop you. Shojing, come with us to Kuanzhong City first." Something big indeed happened. Chapter 521. Under Feng Zhao's lead, the five of them flew towards Kuanzhong City. As soon as they approached Kuanzhong City, Emotienga keenly discovered that the restrictions in the city were very different from before. Although Kuanzhong City used to be a big trading city in Kunwu, the individual cultivators alliance that managed it was only a few individual cultivators in the core formation realm. The city protecting formation and the restrictions in the city were only in the core formation realm. Compared to today's Kuanzhong City, it was completely insignificant. The Kuanzhong City in front of them was protected by layers upon layers of formations that tightly protected the entire city. Its standard was only slightly inferior to that of a large sect's grand mountain protecting formation, and even nascent soul cultivators couldn't act rashly. The atmosphere in the city was also very different. Although the shops were the same as before, the atmosphere was much stricter. People came and went in an orderly manner, and the city gate was heavily guarded, unlike the loose and casual atmosphere in the past. What happened in the end? Emotienga felt uneasy. Although there were good benefits in Kuanzhong City, in the eyes of the large cultivation groups, it wasn't worth the effort to reach out, let alone reach out together. The situation in front of them must have been taken over by the large cultivation groups. However, Feng Xiao didn't explain it clearly, and only asked them to enter Kuanzhong City first. They didn't know what happened, but they entered such a heavily guarded place. If something happened at this thought, she looked at Qin. Qin smiled at her, hinting that she didn't need to worry. During the demonic beast riot last time, Danding School's orthodoxy was almost destroyed. Relying on the school's resources, they managed to persevere. Before he left, Xianqing School was very powerful and wouldn't fall so easily. As long as Xianqing School was there, the two of them couldn't be easily touched. "Fellow, Taoist Feng." Qin paused a bit uncomfortably and asked, Are there any senior martial brothers or sisters from Xianqing School here? There was no City Lord's mansion in Kuanzhong City. The original Individual Cultivators Alliance was located in the Wanha Pagoda, in the center of the city. Feng Xiao led them to land in front of the Wanha Pagoda. While opening the Wanha Pagoda's restrictions with his identity tablet, he said with a smile, "You'll know soon." Mo Tinga quickly sized up the Wanha Pagoda, feeling shocked. The Wanha Pagoda's restrictions were even more amazing. It was so heavily guarded that it could compare to the secret places of large cultivation groups. From the outside, the All Harmony Pagoda didn't look very big, but upon entering, one would find that the inside of the pagoda was very spacious. There were dozens of cultivators coming and going, and their cultivation bases were all above the foundation establishment stage. Each of them had their own business, and everyone was busy. When he saw them enter, he hurriedly bowed and went back to his work. This surprised Mo Tinga and Qin Shi. In their group, there were 5 nascent soul cultivators. No matter where they went, low-level cultivators would always be respectful and fearful. How could they act so casually? Feng Xiao and the others did not care, and led them upstairs. Inside the pagoda, every floor was more or less the same. Dozens of foundation-building cultivators were immersed in their work, while a few core formation cultivators presided over them. At the top of the stairs to the 6th floor, Feng Xiao once again took out the token. An independent restriction had been set up on this floor. The restriction flashed and disappeared, and Feng Xiao led them up. When they reached the 6th floor, both Mo Tinga and Qin Shi were gobsmacked. Although they were mentally prepared, they didn't expect to see such a scene. The 6th floor of the Wanha Pagoda was the same as the floors below. There were dozens of cultivators, but all of them were nascent soul cultivators. These nascent soul cultivators wore different clothes and had different cultivation levels. There were men and women, cultivators from cultivation groups, and individual cultivators who didn't show themselves. "Hey, fellow Taoist Feng, these 2 fellow Taoists are?" Someone asked upon seeing them coming up. "Fellow Taoist, can't you see? They're naturally fellow Taoists from Xianqing School." Feng Xiao answered with a smile. Nonsense. This person was quite familiar with Feng Xiao, so he directly rolled his eyes. From their clothes, they knew they were from Xianqing School. However, they didn't know when Xianqing School had 2 young nascent soul cultivators. They had never heard of them. Before Feng Xiao could answer, someone exclaimed in surprise, "Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, it's actually you." Mo Tinga shifted her gaze and saw Lord Taoist Xianin striding towards them. "Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, you're finally back." Then he saw Mo Tinga and was taken aback. "Junior Martial Sister Qingwei? Senior Martial Brother Xianin." Qin Shi and Mo Tinga looked at each other, smiled and saluted him. After the shock, Lord Taoist Xianin was overjoyed. "Good, very good. Not only did you 2 come back safely, but Qingwei also formed her nascent soul. This is really great news. Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, congratulations." Another person came forward and congratulated them with a smile. "Senior Martial Sister Miaoi." Seeing this scene, some people were astonished, some were puzzled, some frowned inwardly, and some were expressionless. Even if they hadn't met Qin Shoujing, most of them had heard of him. Now that they heard Xianin and Miaoi calling him Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, they knew he was Xianqing School's rising star, Lord Taoist Shoujing. They were shocked to see that he was already in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Qin Shoujing hadn't even formed his nascent soul 100 years ago, but he already advanced to the middle stage. As for Mo Tinga, most of the people who knew Qin Shi had heard of her. Although she was known as a genius, she was only in the core formation realm, so she wasn't worthy of nascent soul cultivators' attention. It wasn't until now that they saw she also formed her nascent soul that they took her seriously. When they looked at her seriously, they were shocked again. Mo Qingwei seemed to have advanced to the core formation realm 100 years ago, so she wasn't even 100 years old at that time. Now that she formed her nascent soul, didn't that mean she wasn't even 200 years old? What was going on with Xianqing School? One Qin Shoujing was fine, but now there was Mo Qingwei and Li Lingxi who advanced not long ago. In the past 100 years, There were actually 3 disciples who advanced to the nascent soul realm before the age of 300. This was too shocking. Then they remembered that Xianqing school now had 6 nascent soul cultivators, including the 2 of them. Didn't that mean there were 8? 8 nascent soul cultivators, 2 of whom were in the late stage. Xianqing school, the perennial number 2, finally made a comeback? Fellow Taoists. After greeting the 2 of them, Lord Taoist Xianin turned around and introduced Qin Shi to the other nascent soul cultivators. This is Junior Martial Brother Shoujing from my school. I presume most of you have heard of him. This is the last disciple of my master, Lord Taoist Jinghe. She's also Junior Martial Brother Shoujing's Tao companion. Her Taoist name is Qingwei. My junior martial sister Qingwei went out to travel 100 years ago and hasn't returned. I didn't expect she'd come back after forming her nascent soul. This is really unexpected. Lord Taoist Xuanin's words were full of joy. When Lord Taoist Lingshu passed away in meditation, the core formation juniors of Xianqing school, who had high hopes for all, failed to advance to the nascent soul realm and were always suppressed by Tiandao sect. Later, Qin Shi disappeared on Demonic Mountain for several years and returned after advancing to the nascent soul realm. Tiandao sect, on the other hand, lost a nascent soul cultivator in the incident on Demonic Mountain. Because of this, the 2 groups were evenly matched and both had 6 nascent soul cultivators. However, because Tiandao sect had 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, it still firmly occupied the title of the number 1 sect in the celestial pole. In the next few decades, Lord Taoist Jinghe advanced to the late stage, and Xianqing school was finally on equal footing with Tiandao sect. After that, Qin Shi left, and there was no news of him for several decades, so Xianqing school lost another nascent soul cultivator compared to Tiandao sect. Fortunately, Master Taoist Lingxi successfully advanced to the nascent soul realm during this period and maintained the situation. In the past few decades, the cultivators in the celestial pole were used to it. There was Tiandao sect in the east and Xianqing school in the west. The 2 groups were evenly matched. Now, however, Lord Taoist Shoujing, who had been missing for several decades, actually came back. Moreover, there was also Lord Taoist Qingwei. This time, Xianqing school's title, as the number 1 sect in the celestial pole, was firmly secured. They thought Tiandao sect and Xianqing school would maintain the balance for 100 or 200 years. They didn't expect such a sudden change. Not to mention that these nascent soul cultivators had their own thoughts. They still expressed their congratulations to them on the surface. Qin Shi and Emotienga saluted them one by one, then followed Lord Taoist Xianin back to Xianqing school. Junior Martial Brother Shoujing, Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, did you 2 just return to the celestial pole? How have you been these past few decades? Master misses you very much. Unfortunately, we're separated from Yunzhong by the South Sea and can't communicate with each other. I haven't heard from you for so many years, so I'm very worried. Qin Shi smiled. It's a long story. Our experience in Yunzhong is really wonderful. We'll talk about it when we have time. Master, how is he now? Lord Taoist Xianin answered. What's wrong with Master? Ever since Master advanced to the late stage, our school's prestige rose greatly. He's now overseeing the school. Upon hearing what he said, Emotienga and Qin Shi both felt relieved. Before they returned to the celestial pole, they were worried that after their master advanced to the late stage, he'd go to Master Songfeng to settle accounts. Although Master Songfeng was alone, he was strong and cunning, so they might suffer a loss. Fortunately, what they worried about didn't happen. Senior Martial Brother Xianin, Senior Martial Sister Miaoi, what's going on? Why did so many nascent soul cultivators come to Kuanzhong City? Qin Shi asked in a low voice while looking at the 30 or 40 nascent soul cultivators in front of him. Most of the nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole are here, right? In the end, what kind of thing could make these yuanying old monsters put down their cultivation and gather together? Xianin was about to answer when he heard Feng Xiao say, Fellow Taoist Xianin, what's going on? Xianqing school should also say something about this matter, right? Junior Martial Brother Xianin, you take care of them first, Lord Taoist Miaoi said with a smile. I'll take care of this matter. Lord Taoist Xiaoning nodded, smiled apologetically at Mo Tiange and Qin Shi, then walked towards Feng Xiao. Junior Marshal Brother Shoujing, Junior Marshal Sister Qingwei, Lord Taoist Miaoi said. You've been away from the celestial pole for dozens of years. After you came back, have you ever inquired about the current situation? Qin Shi shook his head. We're anxious to return. As soon as we came back, we hurried back to our school. We passed by this place and were stopped, so we haven't inquired about it yet. I see. No wonder you weren't worried at all, Lord Taoist Miaoi said. Lord Taoist Miaoi said. Every few decades or centuries, demonic beast riots will occur in Kunwu. Do you still remember? Qin Shi nodded. Could it be another demonic beast riot? Not counting the dozens of years he left, he was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm during the last demonic beast riot. So it had been 160 to 170 years. If only that was the case, Lord Taoist Miaoi said with a sigh. This matter is really shocking. About a year ago, the world changed, and the celestial pole suddenly shifted. Now, there's a new continent near the celestial pole, and there are a lot of monster and ghost cultivators living on it. Chapter 522. Ghost cultivators? Mo Tiange was puzzled. Everything in the world had different cultivation paths. Human cultivators had their own paths, such as Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Swordsmanship, martial arts, talisman medicine, and other branches were derived. Demonic beasts also had their own cultivation paths, and eventually became demonic cultivators. But Mo Tiange had never heard of ghost cultivators. According to legend, after people died, their souls would leave their bodies and become ghosts. Ghosts had powers that humans didn't have. But this was only the imagination of mortals. For cultivators, this wasn't the case. For cultivators, humans were composed of the body and the primordial spirit. They didn't care about the soul because it had no power. Besides, once the soul left the body, it would lose all its memories and enter the reincarnation cycle again. Therefore, ghosts didn't exist. Reincarnation was an inherent law of heaven and earth. No matter how high their cultivation levels were, they couldn't touch it. Lord Taoist Miaoi didn't know how to explain ghost cultivators, so he said, Junior Marshal brothers and sisters, why don't we talk about it later? It's not the right time. Mo Tiange looked around. With so many people around, it really wasn't a good time to talk, so she stopped asking. Before long, the meeting was over. The two of them followed Xiaoning and Miaoi back to their temporary residence. Their temporary residence was next to Wanha Pagoda. It was a quiet courtyard with strict restrictions. As soon as they returned to the small courtyard, Lord Taoist Xiaoning asked impatiently, Junior Marshal Brother Shoujing, why did it take you so many years to come back? Nascent soul cultivators like them knew about Mo Tiange's trip to Yunzhong. They also knew about the destruction of the undersea passage and Qin Shi's decision to cross the sea to look for her. But they didn't expect that Qin Shi wouldn't come back for dozens of years. During these years, they could only speculate about their situation from their life lanterns. Not long after Qin Shi crossed the sea, his life lantern suddenly became dim. He must have been seriously injured. Later, his life lantern slowly stabilized and regained its brightness. After that, both his and Mo Tiange's life lantern dimmed occasionally, but never showed any signs of being extinguished. This puzzled the nascent soul cultivators of Xianqing School. Their life lanterns weren't affected, which meant that although they were injured, they would recover soon. Why didn't they come back for dozens of years? Before, Mo Tiange couldn't cross the sea because her cultivation level wasn't high enough. But after Qin Shi went, this problem didn't exist. It couldn't be that they hadn't met each other in dozens of years, right? In the end, they could only guess that he was trapped by something and could not return for the time being. Qin Shi smiled wryly. It's not that we don't want to come back, it's that we can't. As he spoke, he briefly told them about what happened in returning Ruined Sea. Lord Taoist Xiaoning and Lord Taoist Miaoi were both shocked and sighed with emotion. I never expected there to be such a secret place in Yunzhong, Lord Taoist Xiaoning said after listening to their story. Fortunately, you guys have deep good fortune. Not only were you not trapped in the immortal palace, but you also profited from misfortune and obtained an enormous fated chance. Lord Taoist Miaoi said to Emotienga, Junior Martial Sister Qingwei, your guts are too big. You haven't formed your nascent soul yet, but you already dared to deal with so many nascent soul cultivators, including so many great late-stage nascent soul cultivators. What if something goes wrong? There was a hint of reproach in Lord Taoist Miaoi's tone, but it was also filled with concern. Emotienga's heart warmed. She smiled and said, There's nothing I can do about it. At that time, I didn't know Senior Martial Brother had also come to Yunzhong, and I couldn't find a shortcut to return to the Celestial Pole. So I had to find a way to advance to the nascent soul realm and cross the South Sea. Besides, with Senior Fu Yaozi's help, those nascent soul cultivators couldn't do anything to me. That's true, but are you so sure that Senior doesn't have bad intentions? Lord Taoist Xianin shook his head in disagreement. Fortunately, you won the bet, but doing this was too risky. Yes, if something like this happens again, I'll definitely consider it carefully. Emotienga knew her two senior martial brothers and sisters cared about her, so she didn't argue with them. Speaking of which, those big cultivation groups in Yunzhong really bullied people too much, Lord Taoist Xianin said with displeasure. If we were in the Celestial Pole, how could we let them treat Junior Martial Sister Qingwei like this? Emotienga wasn't really angry about this matter. She only said, everyone has their own standpoint. She then asked, right, what's with the ghost cultivator Senior Martial Sister Miaoi mentioned? Do ghosts really exist in this world? Of course they do. Lord Taoist Miaoi smiled and said, Qingwei, although you're already a nascent soul cultivator, you're still young, so it's not strange that you don't know. As she spoke, Lord Taoist Miaoi began to explain. When a soul left the body, it would lose its memory and become an unconscious, powerless mass of energy. It would then enter the cycle of reincarnation. This was a well-known fact in the cultivation world. But under special circumstances, for example, when a soul had a strong obsession before death, there was another possibility. The soul left the body but still retained its consciousness. Since it retained its consciousness, it could cultivate. Just like cultivators who advanced to the next realm, its strength would become stronger and stronger. In the end, it would cultivate a ghost body and become a ghost cultivator. Most ghost cultivators didn't have their memories from when they were alive, but there were also ghost cultivators with strong obsessions who retained part of their memories. This kind of ghost cultivator was the most powerful. The emergence of ghost cultivators was very difficult. First, they had to have a strong enough obsession to allow their soul to retain its consciousness, which was even less likely than mortals with spiritual roots. Secondly, he had to know the cultivation method. If he didn't know the unique cultivation method of ghost cultivators, even if his soul retained its consciousness, it would slowly lose its energy over time, and finally enter the cycle of reincarnation without knowing anything. The cultivation method of ghost cultivators was almost lost in the Celestial Pole, so ghost cultivators naturally didn't exist. Therefore, most cultivators didn't know the existence of ghost cultivators, including some nascent soul cultivators. We originally thought ghost cultivators didn't exist anymore, but we didn't expect that after the changes in the world this time, a continent with both ghost and monster cultivators would appear. What's going on? Qinshi asked. Where are we now in the Celestial Pole? What's the situation on this continent? Previously, Yuanzhou moved, Yunzhong disappeared. Xiaorong appeared in Yunzhong's place, and he also discovered the monster continent. He and Emotienga had long guessed that the Celestial Pole wasn't where it used to be, but they didn't expect a new continent to appear around the Celestial Pole. Lord Taoist Xianin said, Let's put it this way. The South Sea is now northeast of the Celestial Pole. The South Sea used to be south of the Celestial Pole, but now it was northeast of the Celestial Pole. In other words, the Celestial Pole moved southwest by a whole continent. Emotienga thought for a moment, then reached out and drew on the table with her spiritual aura. She drew Yuan Province first. To the south of Yuan Province was the monster continent, and to the north of Yuan Province was Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang was originally in Yunzhong's place, which meant that to the north of Shaoyang was the South Sea. Using the South Sea as a reference, the celestial pole should now be west of Shaoyang and northwest of Yuan province. At this point, Emotianga paused for a moment then asked, "Where's this new continent? How big is it?" Lord Taoist Xianin and Lord Taoist Miaoyi looked surprised as they stared at the spiritual aura map on the table. Lord Taoist Miaoyi asked, "Junior Marshal Sister Qingwei, where did you get this map?" Emotianga said, "When Senior Marshal Brother and I were trapped in Yuan province, we inquired about it. According to the people in Yuan province, Yunzhong disappeared, and Shaoyang appeared in Yunzhong's original place. I thought about it, then the celestial pole should be here." The two Lord Taoists thought for a moment then nodded in agreement. Lord Taoist Miaoyi reached out, and also used spiritual aura, to draw a circle below the celestial pole. She said, "The continent we're talking about is here. It's about half the size of the celestial pole." According to Lord Taoist Miaoyi's drawing, this continent was connected to the celestial pole, and the place they were connected to was directly south of Kuanzhong City. No wonder all the big cultivation groups joined hands to take over Kuanzhong City. So that was why. The two of them were suddenly enlightened. There was a vast forest south of Kunwu, and this forest was the territory of demonic beasts. This new continent happened to appear in the south of the celestial pole, and was connected to the forest. They now understood why so many nascent soul cultivators stopped cultivating and gathered together. The cultivators of the celestial pole had never been afraid of demonic cultivators. For more than 100,000 years, they fought each other, but they also maintained a relatively balanced situation. But it was different now. This new continent was inhabited by demonic cultivators and ghost cultivators, and it was connected to the forest. This was tantamount to the demonic cultivators' territory greatly expanding, and the former balance was destroyed. Lord Taoist Miaoyi continued to say, "This continent is very strange. There are mortals, ghost cultivators, demonic beasts, and demonic cultivators, but there are no immortal cultivators. How could that be?" She asked curiously. "Since ghost cultivators exist, it means there are ghost cultivation techniques on this continent. When ghost cultivators first appeared, wasn't it because immortal cultivators retained their original memories, which was why they created ghost cultivation techniques?" He knew a bit about ghost cultivation. Even if mortals retained their original memories, it was impossible for them to create cultivation techniques before their energy disappeared. Therefore, the first ghost cultivation came from the souls of dead immortal cultivators. "Junior Marshal Brother, what you said isn't wrong." Lord Taoist Xianin smiled bitterly. "But that's the truth. After this continent appeared, we sent people to investigate, but we didn't find any immortal cultivators. But there were a lot of ghost cultivators. If there was an abnormality, there must be a monster. However, this matter could only be understood slowly. They couldn't know the truth all at once." "Then what about the current situation?" Emotianga asked. "So many nascent soul cultivators gathered together. Could it be that those demonic cultivators joined forces?" "Correct." Lord Taoist Miaoyi nodded. "After this new continent appeared, we found that the demonic cultivators in the southern forest joined forces with the demonic cultivators on this continent. In the past year, these demonic cultivators have become restless. Although there haven't been large-scale attacks, there have been many small-scale conflicts. Especially in the past few months, there have been frequent sneak attacks by high-level demonic cultivators, and even nascent soul cultivators have fallen. All the big sects have come to a conclusion that if we don't take measures, we'll be defeated by the demonic cultivators sooner or later. So it's better to take the initiative to attack and use offense as defense." "I see. There weren't many high-level demonic cultivators in the southern forest, but if this new continent was included, the number of nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole would only be a lot more than the number of nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole. The situation was so grim that if they waited until a real conflict broke out, it would be too late. No wonder Lord Taoist Miaoyi said it would be good if it was just a demonic beast riot. The current situation was that the demonic beast riot had expanded several times. If the cultivators in the celestial pole didn't gather together, they would most likely be wiped out. Chapter 523. Junior Marshall Brother Shojing. You and Qingwei just came back, so you should go back to the school first. It's enough for Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang, Senior Marshal Sister Miaoi, and I to represent Xianqing School. Yes, Lord Taoist Miaoi echoed. The war hasn't started yet, and it's only in the preparatory stage. Even if the war starts, it'll be a long time, so we still have to do what we have to do. Qin Shi understood what they meant. In order to deal with the Yao cultivators, there were other matters that needed to be taken into consideration as well. For cultivators, cultivation was always the most important thing. Humans fought against Yao cultivators for the sake of survival and cultivation resources. It was the same for Yao cultivators. Thank you for your care, Senior Marshal Brother and Senior Marshal Sister. He thanked them sincerely, then asked, where is Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang now? 3 nascent soul cultivators came to Xianqing School, and even Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang was dispatched. What about the other cultivation groups? Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang went to investigate the beast cultivators' movements. Lord Taoist Xianin said. It's a big deal. Almost all the influential cultivation groups came for the conference in Kuanzhong, and the ones who came were the real leaders of their sections. Our group has Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang, the 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators from Tiandao sect, Venerable Swordsman Yuanying from Gujin sect, and Householder Heavenly Herb from Danding School. He paused for a moment, then said, by the way, you still don't know, right? Householder Heavenly Herb has successfully advanced to the late stage, and Danding School can be considered to have risen again. Really? Qin Shi was a bit surprised. Only one late-stage nascent soul cultivator appeared in the celestial pole every 200 to 300 years. His master advanced less than 100 years ago, but another one actually advanced. So there are 7 late-stage nascent soul cultivators in the celestial pole now? Yes, Lord Taoist Miaoi sighed. During the demonic beast riot more than 100 years ago, Danding School's orthodoxy was almost wiped out. It still counted as one of the 7 great cultivation groups, but everyone just got used to it. In terms of scale, it's slightly smaller than medium cultivation groups. But I really didn't expect Householder Heavenly Herb to advance to the late stage in more than 100 years, and Danding School suddenly prospered again. The world is really unpredictable. The river flows east for 30 years, and the river flows west for 30 years. Lord Taoist Xianin also sighed with emotion. Ever since Householder Heavenly Herb advanced to the late stage, the conditions for commissioning him to concoct medicinal pills became much harsher. Our Xianqing School isn't that bad. We also have a lot of disciples in the Tao of concocting in our school, but the biggest headache is Bian sect. All these years, they've given us a lot of benefits. Mo Tiange also knew a little about what happened to Danding School back then. The reason why Danding School had fallen into such a state was not unrelated to the other 6 sections. The 7 great sects had originally formed an alliance to attack and defend. If it weren't for the fact that the other sects couldn't send reinforcements in time, the Danding School wouldn't have lost their base. Moreover, the other 6 sects had intentionally delayed the reinforcements for their own benefit. In the past, Danding School's strength was greatly damaged, so they had no other choice but to swallow their anger. Now that Danding School had prospered again, even if they couldn't take revenge, they could still discuss the other sects with regards to pill concocting. Among the 6 sects, Tiandao sect and Xianqing School were the most powerful. They each had 2 late-stage cultivators, so Danding School didn't dare to go too far. Gujin sect was a sword cultivator group, so it didn't rely too much on medicinal pills. Zhengfa sect was located in the northernmost glacier, and was only a branch in Kunwu. As for Lingshou sect, it didn't have many people, and took a side path. The last one was Bian sect. It had many disciples, and was an orthodox Dharma cultivator, so it needed a lot of medicinal pills. Thus, Danding School just happened to have a hold on it. After talking about Danding School, the 2 Lord Taoists roughly mentioned the current situation in the celestial pole. In general, There hadn't been any big changes in the past few decades. There were only two things worth paying attention to. The first was the rise of Xianqing School, which stood as an equal to Tiandao sect. The second was Danding School returning to the list of great sections. The direct result of Qin Shi and Imo Tianga's return was that Xianqing School flourished like never before. It surpassed Tiandao sect and became the #1 sect in the celestial pole. After the two of them stayed in Kuanzhong City for several days, Lord Daoist Xunyang's group finally returned. The members of this investigation team had frighteningly high statuses and cultivation bases. All of them were leaders of major sections. Among them, there were 4 late nascent soul great cultivators, while the rest were mid-stage nascent soul cultivators. There wasn't even an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. Among these people were Tiandao sect's Lu Dingyuan and Lord Daoist Silence, Xianqing School's Lord Daoist Jinyang, Gujian sect's Venerable Swordsman Yuanying, Biyun sect's Ding Wan, Zhengfa sect's Lord Daoist Wuxi, and so on. Before long, Imo Tianga and Qin Shi met Lord Daoist Jinyang. It had been so many years since they last met, but the appearance of the head Grand Supreme Elder had not changed at all. He was now 1,200 years old. As a great cultivator in the late nascent realm, his cultivation level was profound, and he took good care of himself, so living for another 500 or 600 years wouldn't be a problem. If he could find a way to prolong his life, living for another 700 or 800 years wasn't impossible. At the very least, he could still be in charge of Xianqing School for several hundred years. Lifespan. This was also one of the reasons why the other cultivation groups were even more afraid of Xianqing School. Among the numerous nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing School, Jinyang and Jinghe had the highest cultivation levels and were the oldest, but they still had 500 or 600 years to live. Hua Yin was slightly younger, and his cultivation level was also lower, but he also had 200 or 300 years to live. Miaoi was about 700 years old, while Xianin was more than 600 years old. The two of them were in the prime of their lives. The youngest, Shoujing, Lingxi and Qingwei, were even more excessively young. With so many nascent soul cultivators so young, Xianqing School could maintain its prosperity for at least 1,000 years. After learning of their return, Lord Daoist Jinyang was so surprised that he didn't even care about business. After giving some simple instructions, he returned to his temporary residence in Kuanzhong City. Greetings, Senior Martial Brother Jinyang. No need to be so polite. No need to be so polite. Lord Daoist Jinyang said repeatedly. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. After sizing them up, Lord Daoist Jinyang smiled and said, It seems you've gained a lot from your trip to Yunzhong. Not only has Qingwei formed her nascent soul, but your realm is also very stable. If Junior Martial Brother Jinghe knows about this, he'll be very happy. He then asked, How did you two come back? How have you been in the past few decades? Qin Shi told him about their experiences in the past few years. After listening, Lord Daoist Jinyang sighed with emotion. Then he asked about how they left the Sea of Returning Ruins, arrived in Yuan Province, and returned to the Celestial Pole. Lord Daoist Jinyang asked in detail, so Qin Shi also answered in detail, including how they were trapped in the Immortal Palace for several decades, how Imo Tianga encountered the nascent soul heavenly tribulation after she came out, and finally arrived in Yuan Province by accident. She used the transporting formation to return to the Celestial Pole. He didn't mention these things in detail before, so Xianin and Miaoi were shocked when they learned about the tribulation. Lord Daoist Jinyang was lost in thought. Nascent soul heavenly tribulation. There was actually a nascent soul heavenly tribulation. Senior Martial Brother Jinyang. Is there a problem? Qin Shi asked. Nothing. Lord Daoist Jinyang stroked his beard and looked at Imo Tianga with a smile. Every time Qingwei advances, she's so different. When she formed her nascent soul, she even encountered the nascent soul heavenly tribulation. This is a good thing. She'll definitely have extraordinary achievements in the future. He then comforted her. Qingwei, don't worry. Your magic weapon was destroyed, so you can just refine it. The school will definitely help you with this matter. Thank you, Senior Martial Brother Jinyang. Imo Tianga felt warmth in her heart. Having a school as a backer was really different. She was bullied enough in Yunzhong. Now that she returned to the celestial pole, she felt like she had someone to rely on, and wasn't just a duckweed. No need to thank me. You came back just in time. Lord Taoist Junyang smiled. All these years, that old guy Lu Dingyuan refused to admit defeat. This time, he had no choice but to admit defeat. Hee, you didn't see his face at that time. It was green all over. Seeing Lord Taoist Junyang beaming with joy like a child, Mo Tiange and Qin Shi looked at each other and smiled. He and Lu Dingyuan were about the same age. They were both late-stage nascent soul cultivators. They were in charge of the number 1 and number 2 sects in the celestial pole, and had been fighting openly and covertly for hundreds of years. Being able to suppress the other party was something they would smile even in their dreams. After being happy for a while, Lord Taoist Junyang put on a serious expression and said, "You too. Tell me everything in detail again, starting from when you left the Immortal Palace to when you found Yuan Zhou." Mo Tiange and Qin Shi looked at each other. They didn't understand what he meant. Qin Shi asked, "Senior Martial Brother Junyang, is there a problem? This matter is a bit unusual. Tell me first and I'll think about it." Okay. Qin Shi told them what happened after they left the Immortal Palace. In the middle, Lord Taoist Junyang interrupted him several times and asked him about some details over and over again before letting him continue. When he finally finished, Lord Taoist Junyang fell into contemplation again. Mo Tiange looked at Qin Shi, and the two of them looked at Lord Taoist Junyang together, waiting for him to speak. They also discussed this matter many times, but they didn't come to a conclusion. After they left the Immortal Palace, it self-destructed, triggering the collapse of the restrictions in the space. Then came the Heavenly Tribulation. After the Heavenly Tribulation, the continent moved. These things happened one after another. They always felt they had something to do with each other, but they couldn't tell what it was. If Lord Taoist Junyang could give them an answer, it would save them from making wild guesses. After a long time, Lord Taoist Junyang withdrew his thoughts, looked at Mo Tiange, and said, "Qingwei, I'm afraid this matter has a lot to do with you." "What?" Mo Tiange was confused. "What matter are you referring to, Senior Martial Brother Junyang?" Lord Taoist Junyang knocked on the table and said, "You said after the Heavenly Tribulation, the storm didn't subside and became even fiercer. Then the continent must have moved at this time." Qin Shi nodded slightly. "Yes, we've confirmed this time." "Then here's the question. What on earth caused the continent to move? There must be a cause for this kind of change in heaven and earth, right?" "But," Mo Tiange frowned and pondered, "when we came out, there were already dark clouds outside, so it might not have been caused by the Heavenly Tribulation." "Yes." Lord Taoist Junyang didn't object. The nascent soul realm's Heavenly Tribulation has indeed disappeared in the human world. I've never heard of 4 half-heaven tribulations coming together, but I don't believe 4 half-heaven tribulations could cause the continent to move. Even deification realm's Heavenly Tribulation can't have such great power. The combined power of 3 transformation realms' Heavenly Tribulations and 1 nascent soul formation realm's Heavenly Tribulation couldn't compare to 1 deification realm's Heavenly Tribulation. There was more than 1 deification cultivator in this world. If the power of the Heavenly Tribulation could cause the continent to move, how many times did it have to move in the past hundreds of thousands of years? Then Senior Martial Brother Junyang means, aside from the Heavenly Tribulation, what else happened at that time? Mo Tiange thought for a moment. The space where the Immortal Palace was located collapsed. "Yes, that's what happened," Lord Taoist Junyang said. "According to the cultivators in Yunzhong, this space should have been torn open when the world changed at the end of the distant past era. It's existed peacefully in the sea of returning ruins for hundreds of thousands of years, so it doesn't make sense for it to collapse as soon as you came out. But before that, you did one thing. The mysterious void cloud formation you mentioned, the space-tearing technique." Chapter 524. What Lord Taoist Junyang said was just a guess. There was no way to confirm the truth now that the palace had collapsed. Seeing Mo Tiange's worries, Qin Shi said, You don't have to think too much. We had no choice at that time. Who knew this would happen? Emotinga shook her head. I know. I'm not such a pedantic person. It's just that when the world changed, the continent shifted, and so many people's fates changed because of our unintentional behavior. I feel a little sad. If Lord Taoist Jinyang's guess was right, then when they used the Xuanxiu cloud formation to tear the space, they accidentally touched something, causing the destruction of the palace, the collapse of the restriction, and the disappearance of the space. As for this space, it involved some unknown law, which led to this change in the world. This conjecture could be said to have no basis, but the events were closely linked, making people feel that it was only natural. Emotinga sighed in her heart and stopped thinking about it. It had happened, so it was useless to think about it. After seeing Lord Taoist Jinyang, they set off again to return to Xianqing School. Lord Taoist Jinyang's opinion was the same as Xuanin's and Miao Er's. Xianqing School already had 3 nascent soul cultivators, so they didn't need to stay. Besides, Emotinga had just advanced to the nascent soul realm, and her magic weapons were destroyed, so it was time for her to stabilize her realm in closed-door meditation. 2 days later, they finally saw the gate of Xianqing School. On the vast Mount Taikong, the 6 peaks looked majestic, the sea of clouds was vast, and the immortal aura lingered. Everything was the same as when they left. The difference was that the Grand Mountain Protecting Formation on Mount Taikong was almost fully activated, leaving only 1 or 2 exits. The patrolling disciples were several times more vigilant than before, and the atmosphere was solemn. When the patrolling disciples saw the 2 of them, a streak of light flew out from the direction of Soul's retreat peak and flew towards them before the patrolling disciples could greet them. Shoujing Qingwei. It was Lord Taoist Huayan, Senior Martial Brother Huayan. The 2 greeted together. Lord Taoist Huayan nodded with a smile and greeted them. Senior Martial Brother Jinyang has sent a message. I didn't expect you to come back so soon. How have you been all these years? Qinshi said. Thank you for your concern, Senior Martial Brother Huayan. We're lucky. That's good. Let's go in first. Dao Lord Huayan gestured for the patrolling disciples to continue patrolling and landed on Clear Spring Peak with the 2 of them. Before they arrived at Clear Spring Peak, the 2 of them could already see nearly 100 foundation-building disciples lined up neatly on the peak, led by several core formation cultivators. Upon seeing them coming over, the foundation-building disciples said in unison, Welcome back to the mountain, Grandmaster Shou Jing and Grandmaster Qing Wei. Nearly 100 disciples shouted in unison, their voices shaking the heavens. Emotinga was startled and turned to look at Lord Taoist Huayan. Senior Martial Brother Huayan, this is, Lord Taoist Huayan smiled. It's a special time. I can only keep things simple. Please don't mind. This is still simple? If he didn't, what would he do? But then again, from the perspective of the sect, it really wasn't that grand. Without summoning aura refining disciples, these foundation building disciples and core formation cultivators only belong to Clear Spring Peak. Compared to last time when Qinshi came back after forming his nascent soul, there was simply no comparison. Welcome back Martial Uncle Shou Jing and Martial Uncle Qingwei. As soon as they landed, the core formation cultivators led by Master Taoist Ming Zhen came up and saluted them respectfully. Senior Martial brothers and sisters, no need to be so polite. Qinshi flicked his sleeves and lifted them up. The core formation cultivators of Clear Spring Peak were all advanced inner disciples of Lord Taoist Jinghe, and were much older than him. So he was used to calling them senior martial brothers and sisters, even though he had formed his nascent soul. Ming Zhen didn't dare to be arrogant and said respectfully, Martial Uncle Shou Jing has formed his nascent soul. How can you still call him that? Martial Uncle, please don't call me senior martial brothers and sisters anymore. Qinshi smiled helplessly. Everything about this senior martial brother Ming Zhen was good, but he was a bit pedantic. After he formed his nascent soul, he occasionally met him, but every time he called him that, he had to correct him. Fortunately, apart from Ming Zhen, Suxin, Chongkong, and Qingyuan were more casual and greeted them. Chongyan greets Martial Uncle Shou Jing and Martial Uncle Qingwei. The last core formation cultivator, who came up stunned Emotienga. Then she was pleasantly surprised. Big brother Yi? This person was Yi Jingwen. They hadn't seen each other for more than 80 years, and he had formed his gold core successfully. Yi Jingwen looked up and said with a smile, "You flatter me. Martial uncle is already a nascent soul cultivator, so I have to change the way I address you. Master gave me the name Chong Yun. Martial uncle. You can call me by my Taoist name from now on." In front of everyone, Emotienga suppressed her excitement and said with a smile, "I haven't been back for many years, so I was excited to see an old friend." After all the core formation cultivators of Clear Spring Peak greeted him, Qin turned around and asked, "Senior Martial Brother Huayan, is my master in Shangqing Palace? Should we go and greet him now?" Lord Taoist Huayan said, "Senior Martial Brother Jinghe is in closed-door meditation. I'm afraid he won't see you until a few days later." Closed-door meditation. Qin was stunned, and even Emotienga was nervous. "My master. Don't think too much." Lord Taoist Huayan waved his hand with a smile. "Senior Martial Brother Jinghe is only in closed-door meditation to practice secret techniques. There's no other reason. You came back too soon, so he didn't have time to come out." Oh, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. They were used to their master's sloppy appearance. When he had nothing to do, he would stay in Shangqing Palace and tease the maids. Now that they heard he was in closed-door meditation, they thought of his injury last time. "You just came back, so you must be tired. Why don't you take a rest first?" Lord Taoist Huayan said. "When you've settled down, I'll come to visit you and catch up with you." Qin nodded. "Thank you, Senior Martial Brother." Lord Taoist Huayan smiled, cupped his hands, summoned his flying magic weapon, and went back to Soul's Retreat Peak. As soon as Lord Taoist Huayan left, Qin told Ming Zhen to dismiss the disciples. The two of them were about to go back to their cave, when a female cultivator in the late stage of the foundation building realm came to greet them. "Greetings, Grandmasters." Emotienga took a closer look and was surprised. "Limbua." Yes. The woman looked gentle and well-mannered. She was Shui Limbua. She looked up and said with a smile, "After learning about you Grandmasters, Limbua and Jinji have tidied up the cave and are waiting for you to come back." "Oh, where's Jinji?" Shui Limbua smiled. Jinji was so excited that he couldn't sit or sleep for 2 days after learning that you two were back. So I told him to wait in the cave, so that he wouldn't be rude in front of others. Emotienga glanced at Qin. The two of them felt helpless and amused at the same time. "In that case, let's go back now, lest he waits for too long." Yes. The three of them returned to the mountain where the cave was. When they opened the stone door, they saw someone rushing out in a hurry. When he saw the two of them, he stopped and suddenly knelt down. "Jinji greets Master and Auntie." "Jinji." Emotienga stepped forward and pulled him up. They hadn't seen each other for decades, but Yi Jinji still looked the same. His cultivation level had improved, and he was now in the peak stage of the foundation building realm. He looked less childish and more mature. He was almost 170 years old now. "Auntie." Looking at her, Yi Jinji's eyes were slightly wet. "You're finally back. You're finally back." Emotienga was also very excited since they hadn't seen each other for many years. After wandering outside for a long time, she missed everything in Xianqing school. Not to mention that Jinji was her family. "Auntie, are you okay? You guys didn't come back for such a long time, so I was always on tenterhooks." "Fortunately, Grandmaster said your natal lanterns were fine." Yi Jinji wiped the corners of his eyes, then said with a smile, "Right, I'm really stupid. Now that you're back safe and sound, of course everything's fine." "Jinji, the two Grandmasters have returned from afar. Let's go inside first." Shui Limbua's reminder made Yi Jinji come back to his senses. He patted his head and said, "Yes, I'm stupid again. Master, Auntie, let's talk inside." After entering the cave, Emotienga looked around. Sure enough, the cave was neat and tidy. Presumably, the two of them had been diligently taking care of it and hadn't slacked off. While looking around the cave, Emotienga picked up the tea Shui Limbua brought to her, took a sip, and looked at Shui Limbua with some surprise. Shui Limbua said with a smile, Junji said Grandmaster Qingwei likes this kind of spiritual tea. I wonder if it suits her taste? Emotinga nodded. Thank you. Shui Limbwa seemed relieved, bowed her head and retreated. Yi Junji was about to say something, but when he saw the two of them looking a little tired, he swallowed his words and said, Auntie Master, you've just come back, so you must be tired. I won't bother you anymore. Take a rest first. Call us if you need anything. She patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. You've worked hard all these years. You should also take a rest. Master and Auntie are back, so we'll have plenty of time to talk. Yes. After Yi Junji left, Emotinga looked at his back, waved her hand, and set up a soundproof barrier. What's wrong? Qinshi asked. Did you keep Shui Limbwa to train her to do things? Hearing this, Qinshi smiled and put down the teacup in his hand. What else? With her aptitude, do you think she'll accept a disciple? Emotinga nodded as if she understood something. You're right. Limbwa's aptitude is poor, but she's steady. Among the two of us, Junji is our only disciple, but Junji's personality is a bit too pure. Yes, when our cultivation levels are high, it's not convenient for us to do some things by ourselves, so we need our disciples to do things for us. As for Junji, I don't count on him. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have accepted him as a disciple. With this child's personality, it's better for him to simply cultivate. I don't think it's troublesome to choose a disciple from our sect. Limbwa has an unusual relationship with Junji, so we can't avoid her anyway. It's better to keep her here and let her handle chores for us, so that we can concentrate on our cultivation in the future. Over the years, she's been reliable. She's both quick-witted and scheming. If we give her an opportunity, she knows how to seize it. She's a smart person. But, Emotinga frowned slightly. I think she's very firm in pursuing Dao. Won't this delay her too much? Qinshi smiled. What's there to delay? Many disciples beg for her help. With her aptitude, if we don't help her, can she form her gold core? Emotinga thought about it and shook her head. Forming her gold core with 5 spiritual roots wasn't a 1 in a million problem. That's it. She's doing things for us, so we'll help her form her gold core. Chapter 525. They hadn't returned for nearly 100 years, so there were many things to deal with. Shui Limbwa and Yi Junji handled the matter of the Immortals' Cave very well, saving them a lot of trouble. Later, they met up with their fellow disciples and reminisced about old times. The two of them were busy for several days. Needless to say, Yi Jingwen had already formed his gold core. His aptitude was good, and he had always been diligent in his cultivation. Before Emotinga went out to travel, she tried to form her gold core, but unfortunately failed. Over the past 100 years, he had tried a few more times and finally succeeded in breaking through not long ago. Guangzhu, Zhanbai, and the others were also doing well. Guangzhu's cultivation level was getting better and better, and he was doing his best to help Zhan Bai reach the gold core formation realm. It was said that this junior martial brother Bai had a very good aptitude and a solid foundation. Guangzhu also asked Lord Taoist Huayan for help, so the possibility of him forming his gold core was very high. To Emotinga's surprise, after she came back, Luo Fengxue didn't visit her or even ask about her. She felt strange. Could it be that because I formed my nascent soul, she felt it was inconvenient to make friends? With Luo Fengxue's personality, it didn't seem like it. After asking Shui Limbwa, she learned that she was also in closed-door meditation to form her gold core. Luo Fengxue's aptitude was also excellent, but she was more interested in power, so she wasn't very diligent in her cultivation. After so many years, she only reached the peak stage of the foundation building realm. In recent years, a group of core formation cultivators at Xianqing School, who had reached the end of their lifespans, passed away. At the same time, the younger generation of disciples formed their gold cores one after another, and the high-level cultivators were gradually replacing each other. Yi Jingwen was one of them. He was a little over 200 years old, which was still very young for a core formation cultivator. Morning Sun Peaks by Yinfei had advanced to the core formation realm earlier than Emotinga. This junior martial brother but had a single spiritual root, and successfully advanced to the core formation realm at the age of 130. He could be considered a promising young man. Unfortunately, with Qin Shoujing Li Lingxi and Mo Qingwei ahead of him, his cultivation speed could only be considered passable. To Mo Tianga's surprise, junior martial sister Jiang of Drifting Cloud Peak also succeeded in forming her gold core. According to Shui Limbua's report, after experiencing the shock of Bai Yanfei's marriage and Lord Taoist Lingxi's death, this junior sister Jiang put away her unruly temperament and devoted herself to cultivation. At the age of 160, she advanced to the core formation realm. On the contrary, senior martial sister Wu, whom Bai Yanfei married, never succeeded in forming her gold core. After spending a few days with martial uncle Wu, Shui Limbua grew bolder and said to Mo Tianga, "Martial uncle Wu's aptitude is quite good. If he didn't take care of secular affairs for martial uncle Bai every day, maybe he would have succeeded in forming his gold core a few years ago." She spoke implicitly, but Mo Tianga understood what she was trying to say. Senior martial sister Wu was Lord Taoist Miaoyi's last disciple, so one could imagine her aptitude. She was slightly older than him, and should be around 190 years old. As a nascent soul cultivator's advanced inner disciple, it was very common for her to reach core formation at this age. Back then, junior martial sister Jiang was frustrated in love, and senior martial sister Wu unexpectedly won. Who could have foreseen this day? If Bai Yanfei hadn't chosen senior martial sister Wu, junior martial sister Jiang might not have succeeded in forming her gold core. If she hadn't married Bai Yanfei, senior martial sister Wu might have advanced to the gold core formation realm a long time ago. Bai Yanfei married senior martial sister Wu because he wanted to find a suitable dual cultivation partner. With his single spiritual root, he definitely wouldn't choose a female cultivator who couldn't form her gold core. Today's situation was beyond his expectation. In addition, not everyone in the younger generation successfully formed their gold core. Some people died unexpectedly. That person was Wei Jiasi. Before Mo Tianga formed her gold core, eldest martial sister Han Qingyu, who was under Lord Taoist Xianin, succeeded in forming her gold core. As for second martial sister Wei Jiasi, she was still stuck in the foundation building realm until she left the mountain. Shui Limbua said she couldn't advance to the gold core formation realm. Seeing that she was getting older and older, she made up her mind to form her gold core by force. As a result, she suffered from qi energy deviation and died unexpectedly. After this incident, the grandmasters of each peak ordered their disciples not to forcibly make realm breakthroughs if their mental state wasn't strong enough. After hearing this news, Mo Tianga was silent for a long time. Although that senior martial sister Wei was arrogant, she wasn't a bad person. It was just that because she was trapped by her emotions and entered a demonic barrier, she ended up like this, which really made people sigh. As for Wan Mingzhu, her condition had improved a lot in the past few years. Han Qingyu and Luo Fengxue took good care of her, so she had a good life on Sweet Dew Peak. A few days later, when everything was settled, Shangqing Palace finally sent news that Lord Taoist Jinghe had come out of his closed-door meditation. Mo Tianga and Qin Shi were overjoyed. They immediately went to Shangqing Palace to pay their respects. They hadn't been back for more than 80 years. Although the maids in Shangqing Palace still had the same names, the people had changed. The original maids were getting older, so they either went back to concentrate on cultivating or looked for other jobs. After all, although there were many benefits to being a nascent soul grandmaster's maids, they couldn't do it forever. They were already more than 200 years old. If their cultivation levels didn't improve, they would only have 100 years left before they passed away. None of these new maids recognized them. The new Mingxia welcomed them into Shangqing Palace with bewilderment. At first glance, the two of them saw Lord Taoist Jinghe sitting on the dragon throne, flipping through a book. He was obviously more than 1,000 years old, but he still looked the same. He didn't age at all. He had black hair, a short beard, a golden crown, and a brocade robe, giving off a threatening aura of nobility. Even though he was sitting very seriously at the moment, he still gave off a lazy and indulgent aura. Emotinga was a bit absent-minded as she watched this scene. It was as if time had never passed, and she had returned to the first time she saw this master. Master! Upon seeing them coming in, Lord Taoist Jinghe looked up. In the next moment, he threw the book in his hand at them. Two little brats. He scowled and glared at them. You've really grown up. You left and didn't come back. How many years has it been? Huh. It's fine if you didn't come back, but you didn't even send a message. Chirp, 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 chirp. The two of them lowered their heads and obediently took the scolding. Looking at the lively and angry master, they couldn't help but smile and feel warmth in their hearts. They'd been wandering outside for so many years. How much did they miss this scene? It was precisely because of the existence of this precious master that Xianqing School was their home. Senior Martial Brother Jinghe, Senior Martial Brother Jinghe. Seeing that he was cursing more and more smoothly and showed no signs of stopping, Lord Taoist Huayan hurriedly stopped him. Enough, enough! With someone trying to smooth things over, Lord Taoist Jinghe snorted and sat back to drink tea to moisten his throat. I'll let you go first. He hadn't cursed like this for a long time. It was so refreshing. Senior Martial Brother Huayan. The two of them saluted Lord Taoist Huayan next to them. Although Lord Taoist Huayan's cultivation level wasn't high, he was much older than them and had a good relationship with Lord Taoist Jinghe. So the two of them behaved respectfully and didn't dare to be rude. Junior Martial brothers and sisters, there are no outsiders here, so you don't have to be so polite. Sit down. After Lord Taoist Huayan said that, Emotinga and Qin she didn't refuse and naturally found a place to sit. Lord Taoist Jinghe glared at them and shouted, Master, I haven't told you to sit yet. The two of them had no choice but to stand up again. Seeing that they were so obedient, Lord Taoist Jinghe nodded with satisfaction. Okay, sit down. The corner of Qin Shi's mouth twitched a little. He resisted the urge to roar and sat down again. Emotinga turned her face away and patted her forehead. Okay, tell me what happened. Why didn't you come back for so long? Lord Taoist Jinghe finally asked calmly. He then stared at Qin Shi and added, And you brat, why do you look a few years older after leaving for a few decades? Hearing this, the two of them were a little moved. Everyone saw the change in Qin Shi's appearance, but neither Xianyi nor Xinjiang asked. They probably didn't realize that at his age, his appearance couldn't change at all, but their master noticed it at a glance. Master, Emotinga answered first. It's not that I didn't want to come back, but I couldn't. She didn't need to explain the reason why she couldn't come back, right? Qin Shi left the celestial pole to look for her, because he found the undersea passage collapsed. Lord Taoist Jinghe's face darkened. Then what happened? Don't tell me it took this brat decades to find you. Of course not, but, Qin Shi said helplessly, we couldn't come back. As he spoke, he answered the previous question, and briefly told them about being trapped in the immortal palace in returning ruined sea. He had already told these things 3 times. Listening to their experiences, Lord Taoist Jinghe looked more and more surprised. In the end, he said with jealousy, You two brats, your luck is really good. You can even encounter this kind of fated chance. Ancient psychic magic weapon, divine beast's breath, a deification cultivator's treasure, and a nascent soul puppet. TSK, so many things. What a big profit. If he had this kind of fated chance, why would he be trapped in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm for so many years? As for the dangerous things they encountered along the way, they weren't important. If they wanted to achieve something, they had to go through hardships. In any case, they were very good now. Girl, Lord Taoist Jinghe looked at Emotinga and sighed. I really don't know if you're unlucky or lucky. When you were building your foundation, you traveled for more than 20 years. You were also trapped by others and couldn't get out. But when you came back, you advanced smoothly. Now that you're in the core formation realm, you're even more troublesome. You actually dared to deal with so many late-stage nascent soul cultivators. In the end, you even profited from misfortune and formed your nascent soul. Emotinga smiled. Master, it's because I'm blessed and quick-witted. Pfft. Lord Taoist Jinghe glared at her. You're really shameless. Forget it. But he still asked worriedly. Is your realm stable after you formed your nascent soul? What's going on with that heavenly tribulation? You're not hurt, right? Emotienga stepped forward and reached out her hand. You'll know when you take a look. Lord Taoist Jinghe pressed her pulse, and his spiritual aura circulated in her body. He was surprised. His spiritual aura is so solid. Her body is also very tough. Even cultivators who practice body refining technique can't have this kind of effect. Being reshaped by heavenly thunder is indeed extraordinary. When she built her foundation, she obtained Zhong Muling's 5-spirit body refining technique. When she formed her nascent soul, her heavenly tribulation was also reshaped by heavenly thunder. Whether it was her meridians or her body, they were all tough to a certain extent. In a fight of magical powers in the future, she could be said to have a lot of advantages. Brat, what about you? Lord Taoist Jinghe looked at Qinshi. Were you seriously injured when you crossed the sea? Are you okay now? Qinshi nodded. Rest assured, master. When I got the vermilion bird bow, my body was tempered by the vermilion bird's breath. My injuries were all healed, and the problem of my unstable foundation was also solved. That's good. This was what he had been worried about. Back then, he didn't help him advance to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, because he was worried he wouldn't be strong enough when he crossed the sea. After he forcibly improved his cultivation level, he was also worried his foundation would be unstable and affect his future cultivation. Now that he knew this matter was solved, Lord Taoist Jinghe finally felt relieved. Master, what about you? Have you recovered from your injuries? Emotienga asked. Do I look bad to you? Lord Taoist Jinghe gave her a supercilious look. You just need to take care of yourself. Don't worry about me. Chapter 526. After greeting her, Lord Taoist Huayan mentioned, by the way, Senior Marshal Brother Xinjiang sent a letter saying that now is a special time, so Qingwei's soul formation ceremony can only be postponed for a while. I hope you can understand. Lord Taoist Xinjiang mentioned this matter before they left Kuanzhong City. Emotienga naturally didn't care. She didn't like this kind of occasion, so she wouldn't even hold a soul formation ceremony if it wasn't a tradition. Senior Marshal Brother Huayan, what are you talking about? How can I be so ignorant? After a pause, she continued, I hope the soul formation ceremony can be as simple as possible. I forgot you and Shoujing have the same temperament. Lord Taoist Huayan shook his head with a smile. But this soul formation ceremony can't be skipped. It's very meaningful. Lord Taoist Huayan's words were meaningful. Since Lord Taoist Xianin, every time someone in Xianqing school reached the nascent soul realm, it had a profound meaning. Lord Taoist Xuanin's nascent soul realm represented the beginning of Xianqing school's prosperity. After Qinshi's nascent soul realm, the number of nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing school finally caught up with that of Tiandao sect. After Qinshi left, Xianqing school lost one nascent soul cultivator and stabilized the situation. As for Emotienga, after she reached the nascent soul realm, the number of nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing school suddenly increased to 8, firmly occupying the position of the number 1 sect in the celestial pole, indicating the coming millennium of prosperity. What surprised outsiders was that among the 4 new nascent soul cultivators, 3 were Lord Taoist Jinghe's disciples. Thinking of this, Lord Taoist Jinghe couldn't hide his complacency. One sect has 4 nascent soul cultivators. Who in the celestial pole can do that? That old man Song Feng is known as the number 1 cultivator in the celestial pole. But he doesn't even have a proper disciple. Ha ha ha. Hearing Lord Taoist Jinghe's laughter, Qinshi's mouth twitched again, and Emotienga turned her face away. Only Lord Taoist Huayan smiled. He was completely used to it. After Lord Taoist Jinghe finished laughing, Lord Taoist Huayan continued. By the way, Qingwei, according to the rules of Xianqing school, after advancing to the nascent soul realm, you can occupy a peak alone. But we've never had more than 6 nascent soul cultivators in all these years. When Shoujing returned from forming his nascent soul, he went into closed-door cultivation to stabilize his realm. He didn't plan to take over the peak of drifting clouds. When Shoujing was not around, junior brother Lingxi happened to form his nascent soul. After some discussion, we decided to give the peak of drifting clouds to him, so Emotinga waved her hand. Senior Marshall brothers, you don't have to feel embarrassed about this matter. I'm fine as I am right now. Yes, Senior Marshall brother Huayan, Qin said. When I formed my nascent soul, peak of drifting clouds was still empty, but I didn't want to move there. Now Tiange is naturally with me. Guarding a peak was really not in line with their personalities. Besides, they only had one disciple Yi Zhenji, including Shui Linbua. There were only 4 people living in the cave, so there was no need for them to occupy a peak alone. Xianqing School only had 6 peaks in total, so they couldn't possibly move the 2 of them to the symbolic main peak, right? I said you don't have to worry about this kind of thing. Xianin has gone to Sweet Dew Peak, so I'll leave 2 disciples to inherit his legacy, okay? Lord Daoist Jinghe said indifferently. If he hadn't nodded, the others wouldn't have been able to assign the peak of drifting clouds to Li Lingxi while Qin Shi was still alive. However, Lord Daoist Huayan felt that it was better to tell them about this matter. After talking about some chores, Lord Daoist Huayan got up and left. Lord Daoist Jinyang wasn't here, and Lord Daoist Jinghe was like this. So the task of presiding over Xianqing School fell to Lord Daoist Huayan. Although other chores were handled by the head of the core formation realm, when it came to important matters, he had to make decisions. After Lord Daoist Huayan left, Lord Daoist Jinghe put away his indifferent expression and waved his hand to lay a soundproof barrier. Tell me, Tiange, what happened to your magic weapon? Master. Emo Tiange wanted to say something, but in the end, she just sighed. Lord Daoist Jinghe waved his hand. The nascent soul heavenly tribulation is both a curse and a blessing. It's not necessarily a bad thing for your magic weapon to be destroyed. You'll stand at a higher starting point and start anew. You'll be better than before. Yes, Master. Emo Tiange was sincerely moved by such a serious comfort. She thought for a while and began to talk about her idea. Master, I've thought about it. A bird in hand is better than 100 birds in the bush, and the quality of magic weapons is more important than the quantity. My natal magic weapon itself is very powerful, but I've never been able to fully exert its power. It's better to master the heaven and earth fan than to refine a new magic weapon. And Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded. You're right. Most of your senior martial brother Shoujing's divine power is on the 3 Yang real fire sword, and my real killing move is also on the Li Fire Gourd, my natal magic weapon. The so-called natal magic weapon's biggest advantage is that it can grow stronger with me. If I abandon it and use other magic weapons, I'll be neglecting the essentials. Hearing this, Emo Tiange blushed a little. In the whole core formation realm, she didn't pay enough attention to her natal magic weapon. Instead, she spent a lot of time on miscellaneous arts. Although her overall strength wasn't weak, she didn't exert her full strength. Master, Qin Shi said. Just now, senior martial brother Huayan was here, so I didn't explain some things in detail. I suspect Tiange's natal magic weapon has something to do with the Azure Dragon. Azure Dragon? Emo Tiange felt a little guilty. In fact, when I was in the foundation building realm, I got the Azure Dragon's bone. She didn't tell him everything about that experience, and only told him the gist of it. Otherwise, Lord Daoist Jinghe would have jumped up. The Azure Dragon's bone. What kind of fated chance was that? The Azure Dragon's bone? Lord Daoist Jinghe didn't react for a moment. Qin Shi said, one of the 5 spirits, the Azure Dragon of the East. Lord Daoist Jinghe was shocked and asked again, is it the same as your vermilion bird bow? The remains of a distant past divine beast? Yes. Emo Tiange took out a piece of the remaining dragon bone from her Qingquan ring and handed it to him. Master, take a look. Lord Daoist Jinghe took it. Although it was only a small piece of broken bone, it had a strong wood element aura, and that vast and holy spiritual aura blew against his face. It really is a divine beast. Although he had never seen a divine beast, such a vast aura, what else could it be other than a divine beast? Lord Daoist Jinghe held the piece of dragon bone and sighed. Even an old monster in the late stage of the nascent soul realm who had lived for thousands of years like him, had never seen a divine beast's bone. He really didn't know what kind of luck this damn girl had. Qin, she said, Tiange's heaven and earth fan is actually refined from dragon bones. Lord Taoist Jinghe shifted his gaze, and Mo Tiange very consciously handed the heaven and earth fan to him. Strange. After staring for a long time, Lord Taoist Jinghe frowned. There's no azure dragon's breath on the fan at all. This is also something we don't understand, Qin, she said. I originally thought the azure dragon's breath disappeared during the process of refining the magic weapon, but when Tiange transcended her tribulation, the image of the azure dragon soared from the fan and blocked the heavenly thunder. That actually happened. Lord Taoist Jinghe found it unbelievable. But after that, we still didn't find the azure dragon's breath. Mo Tiange looked confused. Master, when the azure dragon appeared, its breath was very strong. Moreover, when I formed my gold core, I once encountered a nascent soul devil cultivator. That devil cultivator accidentally hit the heaven and earth fan, but he was forced to retreat. From this, it can be seen that the azure dragon's breath definitely exists. But where did the azure dragon breath go? After staring for a long time, Lord Taoist Jinghe returned the heaven and earth fan and the dragon bone to her and said sternly, Master can't answer this question. This is your natal magic weapon, and only you can understand it deeply. It hasn't been long since you formed your nascent soul, so it's time for you to stabilize your realm. You should spend 10 years to slowly stabilize your realm and continuously refine magic weapons. One day, when you know the heaven and earth fan like the back of your hand, you'll be able to find the hidden azure dragon's breath. Mo Tiange took the heaven and earth fan and the dragon bone and nodded. I understand, Master. No, Qin, she objected. Tiange, don't forget the 200-year agreement. If you delay it, who knows what accident will happen? What 200-year agreement? Lord Taoist Jinghe didn't understand and stared at Mo Tiange. Girl, what else are you hiding from Master? Mo Tiange felt even more guilty. In the beginning, she didn't trust this master enough, but after a series of things happened, she felt it was inappropriate to say it. Qin, she sighed. Let me tell you. He roughly told her about Wanderer's Way, and said in the end, I learned about this when I was on Demonic Mountain. I originally planned to let Master take a look at it, and help him think of a way, but who knew it would be so coincidental? When I came back from Demonic Mountain, Master was seriously injured, so I put this matter aside. Later, I thought there was still a lot of time, so it wouldn't be a big deal to travel first. Besides, Wanderer Ziwei said if I helped him fulfill his wish, he'd give me all his life savings. So even if there was a way to remove the restriction, I might as well try it. So I delayed it until now. Lord Taoist Jinghe rolled his eyes angrily. In fact, what she thought wasn't wrong. When she went to Yunzhong, she originally planned to travel for a few years, or a dozen years. After she came back, she still had more than 100 years. So it wouldn't be too late to slowly think of a way. Who knew she wouldn't come back for so many years? Come here and let me see. Seeing Mo Tiange lowering her head guiltily, Lord Taoist Jinghe said helplessly. Yes, Master. Lord Taoist Jinghe placed his hand on the top of her head and said, Don't resist. Master wants to enter your sea of knowledge. She was already a nascent soul cultivator now. If she resisted, a serious accident might happen when she entered her sea of knowledge. Mo Tiange obediently closed her eyes and lowered her guard. Then she felt a force that didn't belong to her appear in her sea of knowledge. This force swam in her sea of knowledge slowly and cautiously. 4 high-level cultivators. The importance of the sea of knowledge was comparable to that of the nascent soul realm, or even greater. If they didn't absolutely trust someone, they wouldn't allow the other person to enter their sea of knowledge, because once the sea of knowledge was invaded, their consciousness might be destroyed. This was equivalent to possession. After a while, this force withdrew from her sea of knowledge, and Mo Tiange opened her eyes. Master? Qin, she asked impatiently. How was it? Lord Taoist Jinghe looked solemn. He paced back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back. In the end, he shook his head and sighed. This Wanderer Ziwei is indeed extraordinary. I can't do anything about the imprint he left behind. Emotienga wasn't very disappointed. Wanderer Ziwei already said this was his unique technique. Only deification cultivators could remove it. Just a trace of his divine sense could be preserved for as long as 200 years. And it could even continue to be preserved. It was clear that he had his own uniqueness in divine sense techniques. How could a so-called unique secret technique be easily removed by others? This Wanderer Ziwei has only tried to break through to the deification realm. He hasn't truly reached the deification realm, but he already has this kind of ability. How powerful would a real deification cultivator be? Lord Taoist Jinghe muttered to himself. Chapter 527. Emotienga didn't know how powerful a deification cultivator was, but she clearly remembered the incomparably powerful spiritual aura pressure when Zhong Muling and Yuan Bao waved their hands. Zhong Muling said that in this world, he was already a godlike existence. As for nascent soul cultivators, the higher their cultivation level, the stronger they were, and the more they feared the world, let alone compared themselves to gods. What kind of great divine power did they have to be able to say that? Unfortunately, there were only a few deification cultivators, so how could they meet them whenever they wanted? This question could only be answered when they entered the deification realm themselves. After the three of them finished their discussion, Emotienga and Qinshi returned to her cave. Then Emotienga asked Shui Limbua to summon the steward of the steward's hall. Seeing that it was a summon from a new nascent soul Lord Taoist, the steward's hall didn't dare to neglect it, and the steward's elder came in person. Greetings, martial uncles. What can I do for you? The current steward's elder, whose Taoist name was Shi, came from Qingwan Peak. He was quite old, but he was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm. Basically, it was impossible for him to advance to the nascent soul realm, and he only had 100 or 200 years left in his lifespan. In the various halls of Xianqing School, except for the sect head who chose young and strong core formation cultivators, the other stewards' elders were like Shi. They didn't have much lifespan left and were steady in handling affairs. These senior core formation cultivators were experienced, so they were tactful and reliable in handling affairs. Their cultivation levels weren't very high, and most of them had no hope of advancing to the nascent soul realm. So they were very willing to serve as stewards' elders, so that they could obtain some benefits for their clans or disciples before they passed away. No need to be so polite. Qinshi went straight to the point and asked, "Before I left the mountain, I entrusted a task to the steward's hall. How's it going now?" When he heard the summon, Elder Shi had already thought about the reason. Fortunately, he was very cautious at that time and personally supervised it. Martial Uncle Shoujing, are you talking about the matter of Xuanji School? Yes. What did you find out? After receiving confirmation, Elder Shi took out a jade slip and presented it to Qin Shi. Martial Uncle, over the years, our Steward's Hall disciples have carefully investigated Mount Yuzhu. The predecessor of the Profound Theory sect was the Tianliang sect. This sect specialized in the art of mechanisms and arrays, but it was exterminated a few thousand years ago. Later on, the remaining disciples of the Tianliang sect established the Xuanji sect. It existed for a long time, and even produced a nascent soul cultivator. It was a resurgence for a time, but it lacked successors. In the end, it slowly declined, and was finally destroyed due to internal strife. After that, small sects such as the Ghost Valley sect, the Seven Arcane sect, and the Yin Yang sect appeared in the Jade Pillar Mountain area. They claimed to have inherited their heritage from the Xuanji sect, but whether it was the cultivation of the disciples or the art of formations, they could not be compared to the Xuanji sect of the past. The disciples of the Steward's Hall found scattered records in these small sects, and they also found the former residents of the Profound Secret sect. After spending some effort, they were finally able to confirm that the nascent soul stage senior of the Profound Secret sect had disappeared in the far west. These are the clues found by the duty hall. Please have a look. Qinshi took the jade slip and inserted his divine sense into it. A moment later, he passed the jade slip back to Emotienga. After reading it, Motianga nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work." Hearing this, Elder Shi knew the two nascent soul Lord Taoists were satisfied with what she had done, so she smiled and said, "It's our duty to work for martial uncles. I don't dare to say it's hard work." Qin Shi smiled, glanced at Shui Linbua, and said, "It was thousands of years ago. You must have spent a lot of effort to find these clues. These are your rewards. Take them and divide them among yourselves." After taking the Qianquan bag from Shui Linbua, Elder Shi searched it roughly and found several bottles of medicinal pills and a lot of spirit stones. She was very excited and said, "Thank you for your rewards, martial uncles." Everyone in the Xianqing sect knew that martial uncle Shoujing's pill concocting skills were the best among the nascent soul Lord Taoists, so the medicinal pills given to her must be extraordinary. "Okay, you can go now." "Yes, I'll take my leave." Elder Shi bowed respectfully and left under Shui Linbua's lead. "How is it?" Qin Shi asked after Shui Linbua also left. Motianga pondered and said, "The clues found by the steward's hall are very reliable, and they even have a map attached. We can go and see for ourselves." "Okay." Qin Shi agreed. "There are many dangerous places in the far west desert that they can't deal with their cultivation levels. We can only do the rest by ourselves. After all, it was thousands of years ago, so Motianga didn't have much hope for the steward's hall. It was already beyond her expectations that they could do this. The people of the steward's hall were better at inquiring about information and finding clues than them. But there were some things they couldn't do because of their cultivation levels. "Then when do we leave?" "No hurry," Qin Shi said. "The place where a nascent soul cultivator died must be a dangerous place. No matter how anxious you are, you have to recover some strength before you can go." "Okay." Motianga thought about it and followed his advice. "Then I'll nourish the heaven and earth fan first. And I can also practice the great heavenly thunder spell." After making this decision, Motianga began to live in seclusion again. The spirit-quenching jade buried in the virtual sky world had begun to produce spirit-quenching water. With an inexhaustible supply of spirit-quenching water, the two of them re-refined their magic weapons. After being refined with the spirit-quenching water, the magic weapons' impurities were all removed, and their power increased. Especially Qin Shi's 3-yang real fire sword, which he had nourished for 200 years. Their minds were connected, so it was more handy now. Seeing this, Motianga had great expectations for the re-refined heaven and earth fan. After trying it out with other magic weapons, she took the spirit-quenching water and began a short-term closed-door meditation to refine the heaven and earth fan. Inside the closed-door meditation room, she stretched out her hand. Spiritual aura gathered in her palm, and the heaven and earth fan slowly emerged. After this period of nourishment, the heaven and earth fan regained some of its spirituality, but it was still far from the peak period when it was full of spiritual aura. She opened the fan. The flowers, birds, mountains, and rivers on it seemed to have withered and were no longer vibrant. The natal magic weapons of cultivators in the celestial pole probably didn't use as extravagant materials as she did. The ribs of the fan were made of azure dragon bones, and the surface of the fan was made of natural silk brocade. The pigments used included treasures like Qiyun stone and bewitching moonlight stone. Finally, 1,000-year-old chalcedony was used to increase its toughness. It wasn't easy for ordinary core formation cultivators to get even one of these materials, let alone the bones of divine beasts. If those nascent soul cultivators found out, they would fight over them. Motianga let go of the heaven and earth fan and took out a gourd. This gourd contained the spirit-quenching water taken from the immortal palace. Although the spirit-quenching jade buried in the virtual sky world had begun to produce spirit-quenching water, it hadn't been for long and wasn't as pure as the spirit-quenching water in the immortal palace. She used the newly produced spirit-quenching water to refine other magic weapons, but the heaven and earth fan was her natal magic weapon, so its importance couldn't be compared to other magic weapons. She put the gourd aside, sat cross-legged, closed her eyes and adjusted her breath. After a great circle, she adjusted herself to the best state and made a hand seal. A naked baby with a face similar to hers appeared above her head. This was her nascent soul. This nascent soul was white and tender, its spiritual aura was solid, and it was in a state of full of energy. At this moment, it climbed on top of her head and sat cross-legged. As the spiritual aura ran, the spiritual aura on the nascent soul's body became denser and denser. It suddenly opened its mouth and spewed out nascent fire, wrapping the heaven and earth fan. Inside the nascent fire, the heaven and earth fan rotated slowly. A red mist gradually appeared around it, and the whole surface of the fan flashed with an intoxicating fluorescent light. The fluorescent light became more and more stable. Emotinga waved her sleeve, and the gourd also flew up. The mouth of the gourd popped open, and water shot out of the gourd. Emotinga pointed with her spiritual aura. The water seemed to be pulled, shooting toward the heaven and earth fan, and merging with the red mist. By the time the spirit-quenching water in the gourd was completely emptied, the heaven and earth fan had been surrounded by the water curtain formed by the spirit-quenching water. The nascent fire was still refining the heaven and earth fan. The spirit-quenching water gradually boiled and finally turned into mist. Inside the nascent fire and the mist, the heaven and earth fan was still rotating. Slowly, a tiny speck of dust was peeled off and merged with the mist. Then the second speck, the third speck. As time passed, the spiritual aura in Emotinga's body gradually became empty, and her nascent soul also gradually withered. The speck of dust in the heaven and earth fan became less and less. In the end, the whole surface of the fan was bright and clean, without any impurities. Emotinga breathed a sigh of relief, and was about to put away the nascent fire. Suddenly, her whole body trembled as if she felt something. She swallowed a high-grade restorative panacea to replenish the spiritual aura in her body, and let her nascent soul continue to spurt out the nascent fire. After the impurities were removed, and the nascent fire refined it, an extremely pure aura slowly appeared around the heaven and earth fan. This aura was pure and boundless. It only lasted for a breath, but it made people feel endless vitality. Azure Dragon's breath. Upon discovering this, Emotinga was extremely excited. Azure Dragon's breath finally appeared. Was it because there were too many impurities in the heaven and earth fan before, so the Azure Dragon's breath couldn't appear? No matter what the reason was, she finally found the Azure Dragon's breath. The nascent fire continued, and the Azure Dragon's breath became stronger and stronger. In the end, even Qin Shi, who was outside the closed-door meditation room, was alarmed. He had the vermilion bird's breath in his body, so he was much more sensitive to the breath of divine beasts than others. He was sure that it was the Azure Dragon's breath. However, Emotinga was still in closed-door meditation room, so he couldn't enter and could only wait outside. What did Emotinga do in the end? Did she finally find the secret of the heaven and earth fan? The Azure Dragon's breath gathered around the heaven and earth fan. This breath was colorless at first, but when it reached a certain level, it gradually turned blue. This blue color became stronger and stronger, until it finally transformed into a small azure dragon. The image of the azure dragon. Emotinga had seen Qin. She used the vermilion bird bow. When the vermilion bird's breath was shot by the vermilion bird bow, it would transform into the vermilion bird to attack. During the heavenly tribulation, the azure dragon's breath, soared from the heaven and earth fan, also had the appearance of an azure dragon. It seemed that she finally found the real killer move of the heaven and earth fan. However, her surprise hadn't ended yet. The image of the azure dragon became more and more solid, almost as if it was real, and the scales on its body shone with a blue light. Roar! The azure dragon opened its mouth and spat out a ball of golden lightning which flew towards her nascent soul. The golden lightning of the heavenly tribulation. While Emotinga was stunned, this ball of golden lightning had already surrounded her nascent soul. However, what was surprising was that it didn't cause any harm. Her nascent soul opened its mouth and swallowed this ball of golden lightning. As for the azure dragon, after releasing the golden lightning, it circled around and imprinted itself on the surface of the heaven and earth fan. Chapter 528. Qin Shi sat in the small bamboo hall of the virtual sky world, and looked at the closed-door meditation room next to him. In the closed-door meditation room, the spiritual aura fluctuations gradually stabilized and finally subsided. Then, the door opened and Emotinga stepped out with a happy face. "How is it?" Qingxi asked. "The azure dragon's breath." After returning to the small bamboo hall and sitting down, Emotinga waved her hand to open the heaven and earth fan and handed it to him. "Look, after being purified by the spirit tempering water, the heaven and earth fan's spiritual aura was pure and colorful. But this wasn't the point." Qingxi saw at a glance that the azure dragon pattern appeared on the fan, emitting a pure and vast azure dragon's breath. "This is..." After I refined the heaven and earth fan again, the azure dragon's breath appeared, Emotinga said. "Maybe the original heaven and earth fan's level wasn't high enough, so the azure dragon's breath was hidden." Emotinga wasn't guessing randomly. The vermilion bird bough was the most precious treasure of the ancient glacial ice palace. Not to mention the fact that the forging techniques of the ancient glacial ice palace were much more advanced than those of today. Just the fact that the glacial ice palace had such a large spirit tempering pool meant that the treasures they refined would definitely be extremely pure. Although the materials used for her heaven and earth fan weren't inferior, the refining technique was incomparable. It hadn't been purified by the spirit tempering water, so it certainly couldn't be compared to the vermilion bird bough. Fortunately, the heaven and earth fan was her natal magic weapon and connected to her mind, so it could be refined and improved. In time, it might be comparable to the vermilion bird bough. Qingxi thought for a moment and understood. He said with a smile, "In any case, I finally found the azure dragon's breath. If you nourish it well, the power of the heaven and earth fan will be greatly improved." Emotinga was full of confidence about this. The next moment, she thought of another thing and said hesitantly, "There's one more thing I'm not sure about." "What is it?" Emotinga didn't answer immediately. Instead, she made a hand seal and summoned a golden thunderbolt from her dantian. "This is..." Qingxi was stunned. "Why is this aura so similar to the golden thunderbolt of the ninth tribulation that day?" "Yes." Emotinga reached out and held the golden lightning. This golden lightning wasn't big. It was only the size of a fist. However, the terrifying might it contained was exactly the same as the heavenly thunder that day. After the azure dragon appeared, it opened its mouth and spat out this golden lightning. Qingxi thought for a moment then smiled. "I understand. That day, the azure dragon faced the enemy and swallowed this ball of golden lightning, then hid inside the fan of heaven and earth. During this period of time, the azure dragon has assimilated the golden lightning, and after you re-refine the fan of heaven and earth, the azure dragon has truly recognized you as its master. So this ball of golden lightning is also equivalent to being refined by you. Heavenly tribulation lightning was sentient, but this ball of golden lightning was so docile in her hands. Clearly, she had already refined it." "I see." Emotinga stared at the golden lightning in her hand. "Then this ball of golden lightning. I can use it to cultivate the great heavenly thunder technique," Qingxi continued. "I've read that cultivation technique. This was a secret technique created by a powerful ancient cultivator who had undergone a heavenly tribulation based on the characteristics of heavenly lightning. Although this secret technique could allow one to cultivate heavenly thunder on their own, if one already had a high-grade thunder dharma spell, it would be even easier. Now that you've obtained this ball of golden lightning, you can use it to cultivate the great heavenly thunder technique. This golden lightning itself is heavenly thunder, so it complements each other." Emotinga had also read about the great heavenly thunder technique. The most difficult part of this secret technique was the beginning. First, one had to cultivate pure heavenly thunder. Then, with this ball of heavenly thunder as the foundation, one had to slowly increase the power of the heavenly thunder. Although the great heavenly thunder technique could allow one to cultivate high-grade thunder dharma spells, it wasn't real heavenly thunder after all. Now, however, she had a real heavenly thunder in her hands. Moreover, it was the most powerful type of heavenly thunder, golden lightning. Just like that, she inadvertently passed the most difficult hurdle. Thinking up to this point, Emotinga felt her luck was really too good. The nascent soul heavenly tribulation was originally a narrow escape. Fortunately, she had Qin Shi and Jing Xingji's full help, so she safely passed. After she passed the heavenly tribulation, it was a blessing in disguise. Not only did she have the heavenly thunder to temper her body, but she also stimulated the true power of the heaven and earth fan, and obtained a ball of heavenly thunder. Next, you should enter closed-door meditation and cultivate. With this ball of heavenly thunder, it won't take long for your great heavenly thunder technique to take shape. At that time, we'll leave for the far west. Okay. Emotienga also knew that Wanderer Ziwei's matter was pressing. If she wanted to go to the far west, she had to restore her strength, so she had to seize the time to enter closed-door meditation. Qin Shi's gaze softened. He reached out and gently embraced her. This time, your closed-door meditation will probably take several years. I won't be able to accompany you in the virtual sky world. You have to be careful. Emotienga chuckled softly. We're all people who pursue the great Tao. How can we focus on companionship day and night? Don't worry, Feifei and the others are here. Qin Shi responded. After a while, he sighed with satisfaction. I used to think that pursuing the path to immortality was a lonely thing. I didn't understand why those people wanted to find Tao companions. Now I understand that meeting you is really the luckiest thing that happened to me in my life. Emotienga's heart stirred. She understood Qin Shi's personality too well. No matter how deep his feelings were, he wouldn't forget the great Tao he pursued his whole life. Being able to say such a thing was already his limit. Senior Marshal Brother No need to say anything. I understand. After reporting Azure Dragon and Heavenly Thunder to Lord Taoist Jinghe, and informing Lord Taoist Huayan, Emotienga once again entered closed-door meditation. If there were no accidents, this closed-door meditation wouldn't be too long. The nourishment of heaven and earth fan was a long-term thing. Emotienga only needed it to recover its former spirituality. As for the great heavenly thunder spell, it would take only a few years for her to gain its initial power. Time was tight. She couldn't wait until she mastered the great heavenly thunder spell, which would take at least several decades. But it wouldn't take too long to cultivate it to its initial level. Qin Shi stayed outside, cultivating while paying attention to the situation in the celestial pole. The appearance of the new continent posed a huge threat to the celestial pole. Although Lord Taoist Jinyang had expressed that they weren't needed for the time being, they might have to participate in the war if the situation changed. In any case, Xianqing School had provided for them for so many years, so they had to contribute when it was time. Several months later, Lord Taoist Miaoi returned from Kuanzhong City. After receiving the news of her return, all the nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing School, except for Emotienga, went to Green Phoenix Peak, including Lord Taoist Lingxi, who had just stabilized his realm, and came out of closed-door meditation. Lord Taoist Lingxi was about the same age as Qin Shi. He looked like a young man in his early 20s, but his temperament was completely different from Qin Shi's. He looked gentle, and even a bit gentle. He arrived at the same time as Qin Shi. Upon seeing him, he bowed and said, Senior Marshal Brother Shoujing, long time no see. How are you? When Qin Shi and Emotienga returned to Xianqing School, he was still in closed-door meditation, so today was the first time they met. Qin Shi returned the salute and said politely, Thank you for your concern, Junior Marshal Brother Lingxi. I've been well these years. It's been several years since we last met. Congratulations on successfully forming your nascent soul. Lord Taoist Lingxi smiled and said, I heard Junior Marshal's sister Qingwei also succeeded in forming her nascent soul. Congratulations to you too. Qin Shi smiled and didn't say anything. He and Lingxi were only 1 year apart and entered Xianqing School almost at the same time, so they were often compared to each other. Especially after the two of them successfully formed their gold cores, they became the symbol of the new generation of Xianqing School's geniuses. This kind of long-term competition formed a unique relationship between them. They both paid attention to each other and secretly competed against each other. Although Lingxi gradually fell behind after forming his gold core and couldn't compete with him after forming his nascent soul, Qin Shi didn't look down on him, because he always had a master to look after him. Lingxi lost his master not long after he built his foundation. Since then, he had been cultivating alone. Back then, there was also a nascent soul cultivator guarding Sweet Dew Peak. That person was Lingxi's master, Lord Taoist Tianyun. Lord Taoist Tianyun was also in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. He was very powerful, so he was able to snatch Lingxi, a disciple with a single spiritual root. Unfortunately, Lord Taoist Tianyun unexpectedly died one time when he went out. With Lingxi's aptitude, Lord Taoist Jinyang intended to let him choose another master to avoid delaying his cultivation. However, Lingxi was a person who valued relationships and was unwilling to leave Sweet Dew Peak. Whether he had a nascent soul master or not, the impact was too great. From then on, although Lingxi worked hard, he could no longer compete with Qin Shi. Frankly speaking, Qin Shi and Lingxi's personalities were completely different, so they only maintained their relationship as fellow disciples. However, they were both magnanimous people who admired each other. The two of them entered Lord Taoist Miaoi's Immortal's cave, greeted each other, and took their seats. After a while, Lord Taoist Huayan and Lord Taoist Jinghe also arrived. "Miaoi, why did you come back? Where's that old man Jinyang? And that brat Xianin, is he alright?" Lord Taoist Jinghe made a lot of noise as soon as he arrived. In the whole Xianqing school, he was the only one who called Miaoi like that. Miaoi was 300 years younger than him, and he watched her advance to the nascent soul realm step by step. Jinyang was in the same generation as him, and Xianin was his disciple. Lord Taoist Miaoi laughed when she heard that. "Senior martial brother Jinghe, can't you say something nice? The war is about to break out at any moment. In any case, it's better to get some good luck." "What good luck? We're not mortals. Why would we believe that?" Lord Taoist Jinghe didn't take it seriously at all. He waved his hand and said, "You know I'm impatient. Tell me, did something happen?" Lord Taoist Miaoi sighed helplessly and then said seriously, "Senior martial brothers and junior martial brothers, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" "Whichever one." Lord Taoist Jinghe hurriedly said, "Tell me quickly." Lord Taoist Miaoi felt even more helpless and had to say, "Then I'll tell you the good news first. For now we can't fight with the beast cultivators. The ghost cultivators on the new continent don't get along with the beast cultivators, so the war won't break out before we solve this problem." "That's good." Hearing this news, Lord Taoist Huayan breathed a sigh of relief. "In this case, we also have time to prepare. If we're fully prepared, the beast cultivators may not be able to take advantage of us." And Lord Taoist Miaoi nodded. Compared with the beast cultivators, human beings had an advantage in pill concocting, tool refining, talisman techniques, formations, and other miscellaneous skills. Once the mountain protecting formation was fully activated, and the resources were in place, the beast cultivators might not be able to defeat them even if they spent several times the manpower and resources. "What's the bad news?" "Don't worry," Lord Taoist Miaoi said with a smile. "I haven't finished the good news. We've found a new continent, and there are many Tao cultivators living on this continent. We have an alliance." "It's best if we fight with the Yao cultivators until both sides are injured. At that time, we have no choice but to submit to them and lose our autonomy." All the nascent soul cultivators fell silent. This was indeed something they didn't expect. Before the world changed, Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole were separated by the South Sea and couldn't communicate with each other. Even nascent soul cultivators like them only knew that Yunzhong was slightly stronger than the Celestial Pole, but they didn't know it was this much stronger. Shoujing's words aren't without reason. Dalord Miaoi spoke up a moment later. However, the situation might not necessarily be that bad. "Oh," Lord Dalord Huayan asked, "Junior Martial Sister Miaoi, do you have any other news?" Miaoi said, "I didn't tell you the bad news just now, but now it seems it might not be bad news." She paused and said, "In addition to Yunzhong, we also found something else this time. The Devil Path is restless again." Hearing this, everyone was surprised. Even Lord Dalord Jinghe's hand holding the teacup stopped. The Devil Path? Demonic Mountain? Yes, Miaoi said. This time, Tiandao sect only left 2 early-stage nascent soul cultivators to guard the gate. The other 4 have all gone to Kuanzhong City. Originally, they were very relieved with Demonic Mountain as a barrier, but they didn't expect a group of disciples of the Devil Path to suddenly attack Mount Yuheng not long ago. This time, all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole united to establish an alliance. Tiandao sect took the initiative and dispatched 4 nascent soul cultivators, 2 in the late stage and 1 in the middle stage. Tiandao sect's strength ranked first among all the cultivation groups. Everyone was well aware of Tiandao sect's intentions. Seeing that Xianqing School was becoming more and more prosperous, they did this for the chief position of the alliance. Xianqing School had always been more conservative than them. If they took the initiative to attack, they could still gain the upper hand. Unfortunately, Lu Dingyuan's plan fell through because of the return of Qin Shi and Mo Tiange. With 8 nascent soul cultivators, even if Xianqing School didn't have many nascent soul cultivators in Kuanzhong City, Tiandao sect's status wasn't something Tiandao sect could shake. Even if Lu Dingyuan obtained the chief position as he wished, it would still be the same. Tiandao sect cut off all means of retreat and gave up the title of the number 1 cultivation group in the Celestial Pole. Moreover, the Devil Path, which had been peaceful for tens of thousands of years, unexpectedly attacked Mount Yuheng at this time. What's the result? Lord Jinghe rarely showed a serious expression. What's the loss of Tiandao sect? What's the situation now? With the Great Mountain protecting formation, Tiandao sect didn't lose much, Miaoi answered. This group of disciples of the Devil Path had the highest cultivation level in the core formation realm. It should be a probe by the Devil Path. Lord Huayan sighed. This is indeed bad news. With the beast cultivators in front, and the Devil Path behind, Kunwa's situation wasn't good. Although Tiandao sect suffered the biggest loss, all the cultivation groups in Kunwu were united. If Tiandao sect declined, they wouldn't benefit either. This wasn't the demonic beast riot more than 100 years ago. At that time, human cultivators had the upper hand, and the cultivation groups could still play tricks among themselves. Now the enemy was stronger than them, so they really suffered together. Don't worry, Senior Marshal Brother Huayan, Miaoi said. Demonic Mountain is a natural barrier, and the restrictions in the surrounding mountains are complicated. These Devil Path cultivators can't come too many, so the situation isn't very critical. Seeing the smile on Lord Miao Yi's face, as if she wasn't very worried, Qin Shi suddenly thought of something. Senior Marshal Sister Miao, you just said we have an alliance. Does that mean we're not facing the beast cultivators, but the Devil Path? Miaoi looked at him with surprise and said with a smile, Junior Marshal Brother Shoujing is really quick-witted. You're right. If Yunzhong was only connected to our area, there was indeed no need for them to support us. It would be great if they could help us a little. However, the change in the Devil Path forced them to help us. She said in detail, after the change in Demonic Mountain, we sent people to inquire about the situation. As a result, we found that in the past tens of thousands of years, the forces of the Devil Path have already penetrated deep into the northeastern forest. The northeastern part of the Celestial Pole was a vast forest. This forest was different from the demonic beast forest in the south of Kunwu. There were no large spirit veins here, so there were only some small demonic beasts, and no cultivation groups. Because of this, the big cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole didn't take this forest seriously. Even cultivators who hunted for treasures rarely went there. As it turned out, this forgotten place had long fallen into the hands of the Devil Path. During the war between the Righteous Path and the Devil Path cultivators were driven to the north of Demonic Mountain and never entered Kunwu again. The terrain of that mountain range was complicated, and the conditions there were bad. The Devil Path cultivators suffered a lot there, but they were no match for the Righteous Path, so they had no choice but to move northeast. Although the northeastern forest didn't have many spirit veins and wasn't rich in natural resources, it was at least much calmer than Demonic Mountain. After the change in the world, Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole weren't far apart. The natural moat, and the South Sea became a strait. Devil Path cultivators discovered that there was such a large piece of fertile land in the northeast. How could they hold back? Although they didn't dare to fight against the cultivators in Yunzhong head-on, they couldn't avoid harassing and plundering from time to time. I see. Qin Shi heaved a sigh of relief. If that was the case, the situation in the Celestial Pole wasn't too bad. With the Devil Path cultivators causing trouble in Yunzhong, at least they didn't have to worry about the Celestial Pole taking advantage of the situation and coming to the Celestial Pole. Besides, in order to let the Celestial Pole contain the Devil Path's rear, the cultivators in Yunzhong might take the initiative to express friendliness and help them deal with the beast cultivators. In this way, the alliance could be established. After Lord Taoist Miaoi finished speaking, the others sank into their own thoughts. The appearance of Yunzhong and the unusual movement of the Devil Path. These two things happened at the same time, so the situation in the Celestial Pole suddenly became very complicated. The beast cultivators, ghost cultivators, Devil Path, Yunzhong, and the Celestial Pole. These 5 forces all had their own enemies. Coupled with the geographical distance, it was really hard to say how things would develop. After a long time, Lord Taoist Jingha heaved a long sigh and said seriously, which was rare for him, "This game of chess is not easy to play." Yes. Lord Taoist Huayan frowned deeply. The beast cultivators in the southern forest are easy to deal with, but we still don't know what's going on in this new continent. The beast cultivators and ghost cultivators don't get along. Is there anything we can use? How powerful is the Devil Path in the north of Demonic Mountain now? How many high-level devil cultivators are there? What do they think about Kunwu and Yunzhong? And Yunzhong is powerful, so it shouldn't be difficult for them to deal with the Devil Path cultivators on Demonic Mountain. Will they use thunderous means to eliminate the Devil Path in one fell swoop? We're stuck in the middle, so we're not only friends and enemies, but we also have to maintain a kind of balance to survive. Lord Taoist Huayan's cultivation level wasn't high, but he had rich experience. His thoughts were the key. The Celestial Pole now had enemies and friends, but it wasn't enough to eliminate the enemies. If the forces in Yunzhong were too strong, and the Devil Path were eliminated in one fell swoop, their situation would also be bad. For a long time, cultivators in Kunwu thought they could stay vigilant because they had demonic beasts on their side. After the world changed, the situation changed greatly. Only then did they realize that the original days were actually very peaceful. What was the big deal about killing demonic beasts? They had an absolute advantage and had never faced a crisis of survival. Now they were in a difficult situation. As a group of top cultivators in the Celestial Pole, the nascent Soul Lord Taoists present couldn't escape because they were backed by their sections. Hey! Lord Taoist Jingha suddenly laughed and said, "I'm actually a little envious of old man Song Feng now. He's good. Even if we fight fiercely, he can stay in his turtle cave and continue to cultivate." Lord Taoist Huayan smiled bitterly. "Senior Martial Brother Jingha, are you deliberately making things difficult for us? Is this considered making things difficult?" Lord Taoist Jingha said, "The trouble hasn't come yet. When the beast cultivators launch a large-scale attack, and the Devil Path is unwilling to be left out, it'll be impossible for us to sit here and worry." Hearing this, everyone sighed in their hearts. Wasn't that right? Only the beast cultivators could stay in their sects to cultivate. But if the war broke out, perhaps only 2 or 3 people could stay in their sects to keep watch or even not. Chapter 530. Emo Tienga was completely unaware of the chaos outside. At this moment, she was wholeheartedly cultivating the great heavenly thunder technique. As for the heaven and earth fan, it had already been taken back to her dantian for nourishment. The advancement of a natal magic weapon was never something that could be accomplished overnight, and it couldn't be rushed. In the virtual sky world, her nascent soul was sitting cross-legged on top of her head. It made a hand seal and spat out a ball of golden lightning. This ball of golden lightning was only the size of a fist, but it was full of power. Letting the golden lightning float in the air, Emo Tienga continued to circulate the spiritual aura in her body unhurriedly. When the spiritual aura in her body reached a balanced and stable state, she made a hand seal and released the aura of the origin to wrap the golden lightning. Although the golden lightning's momentum was astonishing, it was very docile to her. It didn't resist at all, and let the spiritual aura slowly seep into it. As time passed, the golden lightning absorbed spiritual aura bit by bit, and gradually grew stronger. Emotienga seemed to have forgotten the passage of time. Cultivation knew no time. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter passed in the blink of an eye. Chin, she sat in the cultivation room, cultivating with his eyes closed. As he operated his cultivation technique, the vermilion bird's breath was released from the young spiritual bead and slowly surrounded him, forming a light red mist around him. His current situation was a bit complicated. Whether it was the young spiritual bead or the vermilion bird bow, they had already recognized him as their master and wouldn't harm him. However, these two things were too powerful, and he couldn't completely control them now. The young spiritual bead contained too much spiritual aura, so he could only slowly absorb it and refine it for his own use. From this point of view, his cultivation conditions were unique. Even without the virtual sky world or spirit veins, he could still use the young spiritual bead to cultivate. As for the vermilion bird's breath, it was too powerful. He could only barely use it by relying on the young spiritual bead. If he wanted to use it smoothly, he had no other way but to improve his cultivation level. Whether it was the young spiritual bead or the vermilion bird's breath, they were both extreme young. In this case, it became difficult for him to cultivate the three primordial cycles technique, so he could only choose to cultivate the pure yang technique. If he used the pure yang technique as his main cultivation technique, this wouldn't be a problem. However, when he advanced to the nascent soul realm, he once considered switching to cultivating the yin and yang dual cultivation technique Yuan Bao gave him, which became a huge problem. After all these years of exploration, he already had a plan on how to switch to the same cultivation method. However, with his current condition, if the two of them changed to cultivating the yin and yang dual cultivation technique, the vermilion bird's breath would inevitably be transmitted to Emotienga. This vermilion bird's breath was too domineering. Emotienga wasn't the person it recognized as its master, so it was unknown whether she could endure it or not. This problem could only be solved when the two of them cultivated together. As he was cultivating, he suddenly sensed something and opened his eyes. After pondering for a moment, he withdrew his spiritual breath, stood up, and walked out of the cultivation room. At the same time, the closed-door meditation room next to her opened, and Emotienga walked out. "How is it, Chin?" she asked impatiently. "Have you mastered the great heavenly thunder spell?" Emotienga nodded and stretched out her hand. In an instant, a ball of golden lightning gathered in her palm. "Although it's not a small success, I can finally face the enemy." Chin, she smiled, feeling relieved. The great heavenly thunder art had reached the initial stage, so the journey to the far west could begin. The two of them returned to the cultivation room and sat down. After briefly talking about the closed-door meditation, Emotienga asked, "How's the situation in the celestial pole these past few years?" "Chin," she answered, "the situation is a bit complicated, but generally speaking, it's neither good nor bad. Since the discovery of Yunzhong, the situation changed from confrontation to balance as Lord Taoist Jinghe and Lord Taoist Huayan expected. For this reason, all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole quickly formed an alliance in Kuanzhong City, called the Celestial Pole Immortal Alliance. Lu Dingyuan from Tiandao sect was the leader of the alliance, and formed a council of elders with 5 late nascent soul cultivators to make decisions together. As long as other cultivators formed their nascent souls, whether they were cultivators from cultivation groups or individual cultivators, they would become elders of the Immortal Alliance. The Immortal Alliance decided that all the cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole, big or small, would be under the control of the Immortal Alliance. All the cultivators in the Celestial Pole, regardless of their cultivation level or origin, would obey the orders of the Immortal Alliance. The establishment of the Immortal Alliance represented the unification of the cultivation world in the Celestial Pole, including Zhengfa sect outside Kunwu, and the cultivation clans and small cultivation groups scattered in the mortal countries. Of course, there were so many cultivators in the celestial pole, and so many cultivation groups, so the management of the Immortal Alliance couldn't be based on the cultivation groups. Therefore, if there was no war, each cultivation group would still be the same as before. The Immortal Alliance had no power over the internal affairs of each cultivation group, but when fighting against foreign enemies, it had the power to command any cultivation group or cultivator. The Immortal Alliance was established at the initiative of the 7 great cultivation groups, and was overseen by many nascent soul cultivators. The other cultivation groups and clans didn't dare to oppose it, and acknowledged its leadership. After its establishment, the Immortal Alliance sent out a large number of spies to investigate the major forces. The continent connected to the southern forest was called Shiji. It was originally in the far west, and was very far away from other continents. There used to be cultivators on this continent, but later, a brilliant ghost cultivator appeared in Shiji. Under the leadership of this ghost cultivator, Shiji established a ghost city, which greatly increased its power. In the end, it even killed all human cultivators. From then on, there were only ghost cultivators on Shiji, and no human cultivators. The cultivation method of ghost cultivators was similar to that of human cultivators. They were also divided into aura refining, foundation building, core formation, nascent soul, and so on. The only difference was that they cultivated the aura of death, and in the end, they formed a ghost infant. According to legend, after ghost cultivators formed their souls, they could rebuild their corporeal bodies. If they finally became ghost immortals, they could also ascend to the world of immortals. However, it was extremely difficult for ghost cultivators to advance. On Shiji, ghost cultivators had never appeared before. In any case, ghost cultivators originated from human cultivators and didn't get along with monster cultivators. For tens of thousands of years, ghost cultivators and monster cultivators on Shiji lived in harmony most of the time, but fights broke out every once in a while. As for the Devil Path, their movements became more and more serious in the past few years. Devil Path cultivators often appeared on Demonic Mountain and attacked Tiandao sect disciples. Fortunately, their previous guess was right. The Celestial Pole wasn't their focus. With Demonic Mountain there, it would be difficult to invade the Celestial Pole again. It was better to cross the strait in the northeast and plunder the cultivators in Yunzhong. In this regard, the situation was a bit better than what everyone had expected. Across the sea in the northeast of the Celestial Pole was Nanzhou. Confucian and Buddhist cultivators lived in Nanzhou, so it wasn't very powerful. Although the Dao cultivators of eastern Tang would also come to help, the Devil Path cultivators of northern Qilin would just stand by and watch. Putting aside the Devil Path cultivators, Yunzhong's righteous path was only slightly stronger than the Celestial Pole, so the gap wasn't as big as they thought. In order to fight against the Devil Path cultivators, Yunzhong sent people to contact the cultivators of the Celestial Pole and establish an alliance. Between Yunzhong's righteous path and the Celestial Pole Immortal Alliance was the Devil Path, so the so-called alliance couldn't go deep. In general, there were only 2 points. One was to build a transporting formation between Yunzhong and the Celestial Pole to facilitate the exchange of materials. The other was to reach an agreement on the issue of fighting against the Devil Path forces on Demonic Mountain. As for helping each other in the war, it was impossible. Long-distance transporting formations cost a lot, and neither Yunzhong nor the Celestial Pole was willing to bear the cost. As time went by, the war gradually escalated. 3 years ago, when Mo Tiange was in closed-door meditation, there were only occasional conflicts. Now demonic beasts raided Kunwu from time to time. Many small cultivation groups and cultivation clans suffered huge losses, and even disappeared. Under these circumstances, the power of the Immortal Alliance soared, and its influence on Kunwu's cultivation groups became greater and greater. If the war continued, every cultivation group would eventually merge into the Immortal Alliance, and it wouldn't just be a war alliance. Mo Tiange smiled. That chief disciple Lu is really a crafty old fox. Qin Shi said, isn't that so? Tiandao Sect's position, as the #1 cultivation group, is out of the question. Instead of fighting for this position, it'd be better to properly manage the Immortal Alliance and dilute its influence. As long as they still have 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, their influence in the Immortal Alliance won't be weak. But as far as I know, the lifespans of those 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators are shorter than senior martial brothers Jinyang and Master, right? Yes. Qin Shi glanced at her. Are you taking pleasure in their misfortune? You can't say that. Emotienga couldn't restrain her smile. In any case, it'll be 500 or 600 years before they die. Who knows, maybe some late-stage nascent soul cultivators will appear in Tiandao Sect by then. Although that was what she said, the smile on her face was clearly malicious. Qin Shi shook his head and smiled. He paused for a moment then said, I admire Lu Dingyuan a lot. He's devoted himself to Tiandao Sect. He's already a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, so it's not impossible for him to advance to the deification realm in 500 years. However, he's now putting aside his cultivation and running around for the Immortal Alliance. Isn't this just to fight for Tiandao Sect's position? Emotienga stopped smiling, nodded and sighed. Yes, there's also Master Taoist Yuan Mu from Jiuyan Sect. Sometimes I really don't understand. Since they've cultivated to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, they naturally have firm Tao hearts. So why are they willing to sacrifice so much for the sect? Xianqing's school treated her very well. If there was a need, she would also step forward bravely. However, she couldn't do the kind of painstaking work that Lu Dingyuan and Master Taoist Yuan Mu did. You join the sect halfway, so you naturally don't understand the significance of the sect for us elite disciples, who joined the sect since we were young. Qin Shi said slowly. People like us entered the sect when we were young and directly became elite disciples. We were supported by thousands of disciples in the sect, so our feelings for the sect are deeper than our family clans. Without the sect, we wouldn't have our glorious identities and profound cultivation levels. At this point he sighed and said, in the end, cultivators are still human. How can we avoid human feelings? If we don't even care about the feelings of the sect, how can we cultivate to the nascent soul realm? We would have long been plagued by inner demons and died. For a long time, Qin Shi always gave people the feeling that his heart was only focused on cultivation. Emotienga never expected he would say something like this. She was stunned for a while then asked, so if there's a need one day, you'll do the same thing as them? Qin Shi smiled and shook his head. Everyone has different personalities. Even if we have deep feelings for each other, we'll do different things. This kind of thing doesn't suit me. Then what will you do? Qin Shi thought for a while then said, if such a day really comes, I'll find someone to handle it on my behalf, and I'll oversee the rear. As long as there's a cultivation level, it doesn't matter who it is. I'm not good at socializing, so it's better to leave it to someone who's good at it. Then he looked at Emotienga. Are you worried that I'll be like them? Emotienga secretly sighed in relief and said, I just find it hard to imagine. After coming out of closed-door meditation, the two of them went to visit Lord Taoist Jinghe and proposed a trip to the far west. After the Immortal Alliance was established, Lord Taoist Jinyang stayed in Kuanzhong City and didn't stay in the sect. As the war escalated, Huayan and Lingxi left one after another to represent Xianqing's school in the war. Miaoyi temporarily stayed in the sect to handle the sect's affairs. Xianyin came back for a while, but soon left the mountain again. Now that Qin Shi and Emotienga left, only Lord Taoist Jinghe and Lord Taoist Miaoyi were left in Xianqing's school. Nevertheless, the two of them still let them go. No matter how urgent the war was, it wasn't that they had to go, and the matter of Wanderer Ziwei couldn't be delayed any longer. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.